All right, I think we're live. So welcome everyone to another Matt Maran Motoring live stream here on the Matt Maran Motoring YouTube channel. Hope you're all having a great weekend and enjoying your Labor Day weekend if you have a nice long one here in America. And thanks so much for stopping by. So like all the other usual live streams, we're going to go for about 2 hours or so. I'll give priority answering to anyone who does a super chat or a super thanks, as well as anyone who's a member there with the green usernames. They always get that priority answering. If you'd also like that, there's always a link in the description. And I see we have a bunch of people already have joined in here. So thanks so much to Brian, Ford Enthusiast, Kevin, Danny, and Lanswath, and Fook, and Wheatman, and Theodore, and Will from San Diego. Thanks for stopping by, everyone. And so I see Brian says his spot was a red C7 Corvette. Very nice. And the Ford Enthusiast, thanks so much for being a member for 11 months now. He says, hey, Matt, hope all is well. Loved the review of the Subaru Legacy. Great car. Sad to see it go. Yeah, I'm obviously very sentimental about the Legacies as well. And it's, it was never the best in its segment, in my opinion, but it's always sad to see any car fail and have to, be put to pasture. It's, I want to see truly every single car thrive and do well and find its own, market and its own niche and, fans who love it and stuff, because there's truly, something for everyone. And it's just unfortunate that Subaru is, going to be taking that option away for people here soon. But get them while you can, And thanks so much for your support all these months as well, Ford Enthusiast. And let me see. Kevin says hello as well. And Danny says hello. Football game at my high school went well. We won 14-0, and I drove alone there and drove me and my brother home. The Bolt is about 50 miles away from 76,000. Rare spots for a Mazda Navajo in 1985-99. Sorry, floating cat hair here. And he says, I started school this Wednesday. Kind of not excited to start my senior year. A lot of drama happened during my junior year. Let's just say a newly transferred senior brought a ghost pew pew in the school. Yikes. That's crazy. Mind you, the kid got arrested on my birthday and had 2 full mags of ammo in his backpack. He's also stalking the girls in one of my classes. That's crazy. He was arrested and charged. That's interesting. So Danny, there's actually just this week, there was a story. There's another high schooler that apparently was trying to bring a gun to school as well. And especially these days, we just had the thing this week. It's crazy. I won't go into a tangent about that because I know people come here to talk about cars, so I won't go into that. But yeah, I'm not happy with the inaction that it's just something that Americans don't care enough about, at least our politicians, to do something about it. And so this will keep on going on in the only country in the world where this regularly happens. It's my favorite Onion headline that is sadly so spot on. It's not even satire anymore. It's like an interview thing. It's like, nothing could have possibly stopped this, says the only country where this regularly happens. Stuff happens elsewhere, but not even close to the frequency it does here. And it's the guns. But I'll leave it at that. Anyway, let me see. Lanswath says, good evening, everyone. No other spots this week. I actually just had a nice Z06 that was being chased by a Lamborghini Urus I saw here on my way home, which was a fun spot. And other little fun side tangent, I actually did see my uncle this evening, who is the one, if you remember from the prior live streams we were discussing, he had an Isuzu Oasis, which is the rebranded version of the Honda Odyssey for the first generation that didn't have sliding doors. It was just a 4-door thing, but it was an actual minivan shape with 3 rows. And I asked him, how we've been talking, we talked about it in the one live stream. I was like, I'm curious, why did you go for the Isuzu over the Honda? And I don't know if he was fully aware that it was based on a Honda. And I think they just said they saw it at the Pittsburgh Auto Show, back in the 90s. And they just really liked it. And they were, excited about it. And they also had a pretty good relationship, I think, with the one dealer around here that had an Isuzu franchise. And so I think it was just kind of a lot of these, especially back then. I think a little bit to a lesser degree, but I think still very much happens today where, a lot of people don't do intense cross shopping. Like, I'm very much analytical and, many of us are. And if you watch this channel, clearly you appreciate a little bit of that. But a lot of people, it's truly just like, maybe you go to the car show, or maybe you just see something out and you say, oh, that looks nice. And you kind of just find yourself, in the showroom. It's very casual and relaxed, and you just find yourself in that car. And so I guess they didn't really have any strong reasonings for going for that over the Honda version, if they're even aware it was based on a Honda. It was just, they like the shape, they like the size, and they're familiar with it. My uncle has owned quirky cars. He had a bunch of Saturns, he had Saabs, stuff that's a little bit out of the ordinary, so I think that, for that reason, Isuzu was completely, fine with him and no issues. And I mean, obviously being a Honda Odyssey, it treated him really well. And they got rid of it before Isuzu left the States, I think. So I don't think he ever had any issues with, servicing or anything, because there was a local dealer there, the entire time he owned it. For anyone who was curious about that, I was able to get a little bit of follow up there on that. Let me see. Fook says, my spots this week were a first gen of the X5M, S65 AMG, and an 812. Separate occasions. Very nice. All very nice. It was funny. The other funny thing, so yesterday I was driving, we were merging onto the highway, and it was one of those things where it was two merged lanes that go into one. And I currently this week have the new Audi S5, which great car. I already did a review on it, but I'm just doing on my week with thing. It's actually thankfully better. There isn't the same throttle lag that there was whenever I was testing it in Colorado. So I don't know if they've done a software update since the drive back in May, I think it was May or June, or if it was maybe an altitude related thing. I don't know. But thankfully this one, there still is occasionally a little bit of a roughness with the dual clutch, but it's really hard to provoke it to even do that. It's most of the time, I'd say like 95% of the time, flawless and really good with the application of the dual clutch and the throttle and everything. So I'm very happy with it, thankfully. Other side thing though, I was validated again. I was at a family reunion today. So my cousin actually said she just had a Volkswagen Tiguan on a vacation there recently and they had a rental Volkswagen Tiguan, and she was like, it was so hard to drive that car smooth. I'm like hitting the gas and I was like, lurching, and her little son in the back's like, wow, like, like he was confused why his mom was accelerating so intensely. She's like, I couldn't wait to get out of that thing. And I'm like, okay, it's not just me. I know there's others in the comments that have said when they've driven Volkswagens in the past, it's been kind of weird too. But then others defend it and say it's fine. Everyone's different. So, your mileage will vary. But as another person, I'm like, okay, it's not just me. And it's not maybe a few others of you who've commented on that. Like, it's actually a thing that, again, I don't know why Volkswagen doesn't fix that. But anyway, just another fun little thing. But anyway, getting back to previous tangent, sorry, roundabout way. The X5M, there was an X5M that was merging next to me in the S5, and they like accelerated, like pull in front of me. And I don't know what they had under the hood. It must have been tuned and must have had like some loud intakes, because the thing was right next to me, and I just hear this like, and it was like this insane intake sound. And I was like, man, they had, it must have been higher boost or something, because it seemed pretty gnarly. It's cool. I'm glad you got to see some cool stuff too. 812s, man, I never see 812s around here. So that I'm very jealous of that spot, Fook. And Wheatman says, good evening from very hot Northern California. Apologies, it's hot out there. Hopefully you're able to stay cool. And he says, hope all is doing well. Yeah, we're doing good here. We had a really fun weekend. We actually went to Kennywood yesterday, which is our little local amusement park. It's a lot of fun. And had a fun little family reunion today, and been a beautiful weather. It's like cooled off. So strangely, we're getting September weather in August here, it seems. And getting into almost October weather. I think next weekend's going to be in the 60s here, which is really crazy for early September around here typically. But hope you can stay cool, Wheat Man. And Danny says, still driving the Bolt around. Parents are still unsure about the car for me. Again, sorry for that rant about school. All good, no worries. And yeah, I hope you stay safe. And it's a sad time to be in school and have to worry about that. And I'm not looking forward to that, paranoia with my daughter here, once she's in school as well. Again, hopefully someday somebody does something. But yeah, I'm not holding my breath, sadly. It's not a fun thing. So yeah, stay safe out there, Danny. And let me see. Theodore says, happy Sunday. Hope you and yours are doing well. Hope you're doing well too, Theodore. And let me see. So, Lancelot, thanks so much. Sorry I missed it, for gifting 5 memberships. I really appreciate the generosity here, and happy to see Rich and Sean and a couple others they're able to get the memberships. Thanks so much, Lancelot. Let me see. Danny also said, my mom told me a little bit more about the Dodge Spirit she totaled. It was hunter green with a tan interior, and I believe it was a 2.5-liter 4-cylinder with a 3-speed auto. Very nice. Wow, sorry I had to meet an untimely demise, but 3-speed auto is, man, must have been an interesting driving experience. Let me see. Decepticon, thanks for stopping by. And Hugo says, hey, Matt, your opinion on the Dakota, hey, Matt, your opinion on the Dakota. Hope you're having a great weekend. Dakotas are great. It's been a long time since I've driven one. I'm hoping to review. There's one around here that's been offered to me, just trying to line up schedules because the guy's been pretty busy. But there's a V8 Dakota that's an RT that I'm hoping to do at some point here. But Dakotas are cool. I mean, it's probably been 20 years since I've driven a Dakota. So it's been a long time, but they're really cool. I mean, nice and small. You got the one we had at the dealership I used to work at was a manual with a V8. That's a fun combo, of course. And the thing was pretty solid. It just was so rusted out. But yeah, they're cool. They're cool trucks. And we'll see, with the new one coming out here, at some points, it sounds like it's gonna be different, because I know Hugo, I think we talked about last week about the new one in South America, and that is, it's great that they're getting it there, but I don't know what the disconnect is, because surely South America can't have a larger truck market than America does, the United States, I should say. So I like seeing the Rampage and then seeing the Dakota. I'm mystified as to why they're doing all this work and all this engineering and all this attention on the South American market, and they're leaving us with nothing. We're not even getting the hand-me-downs of South America. Like, it boggles my mind. Like, even if we're talking, the bean counters that have to say, oh, you need to, only do things if they make money. I can't fathom them making more money putting that investment in sorry, it's on my throat, putting that investment in South America versus doing it for America here. So anyway, yeah, that's a strange thing with that Dakota. I mean, but it sounds like, from what I've been hearing, I think Mopar Insider said we're not going to get that Dakota. We're getting a completely different truck that's made just for North America, assuming it'll be larger. And but it's just why duplicate your work and have to, instead of just having the same thing and sending it up here, I mean, I think the Rampage would be a great Maverick competitor, and this Dakota thing seems completely fine as is. Like, why miss out on 2 years of market share? You could ship it up tomorrow instead of, waiting until 2027, I think, is when the plants in, I think it's Illinois, comes online. Belvedere, yeah, it comes online I think that's going to be their project, is doing that truck. So we'll have to wait and see. I don't know why Dodge is happy to sit on the sidelines for all this time, but that's what they're doing. But it's cool for those who do get it in South America there. And Michelle says, what's going on, Matt? Thoroughly enjoyed the junkyard walk around video. As a 2000s kid, it was very nostalgic seeing all the late 90s and 2000s cars. I'm glad you liked it. And yeah, I just have to say thank all of you so much for your support of that new endeavor. There's over 400 subscribers already, and the video has been doing way better than I honestly expected. I mean, I had pretty low expectations, especially with just the way, the algorithm treats this channel. And I mean, that video is very much overperforming. And I know YouTube does push small channels a lot, so they're probably putting their finger on the scale a little bit. But I think it's like 1,600 views now, which is doing better than the POV videos do usually. I mean, those are easy to do, so I don't really care what kind of views those get. But yeah, I mean, it's doing really well, and I hope it's a sign of good things to come. Again, maybe it's short-lived. I know I've seen some other people who have said that with new channels, oftentimes you get really good views until you get monetized. And then once you get monetized, you would think Google would be excited about making money, but it seems like that changes the algorithm in some way. So I don't know. We'll have to see, how that channel goes, and it might be a success initially, and then peter off. And I'm going to keep going with it and see what happens. But very, very great feedback. I had so many very helpful comments too. Like someone gave me a tip that, on the cars that have digital odometers where you can't, figure out how old they are and what the odometer reading is. You can sometimes look for an oil change sticker, which I hadn't even thought about. And someone else gave me a really good tip as well. I can't remember what it was right now, but so really cool to kind of get that feedback, and I'm learning, and again, it was so much fun to do that. It's a ton of walking. I think that day I walked 12,000 steps. For anyone who does step counting, there's a lot of walking, but I love it, and I need to do more walking anyway. So it was a good reason to kind of exercise as well. But I love doing that. So yeah, like I mentioned in I think the last live stream, the plan is going to be to do a long form video like that once every 2 weeks is going to be the goal, and then fill in the gaps with either every day or every other day. I'll be doing a short, which will then be also posted on Instagram and TikTok, and that'll kind of hopefully bring in other new people and boost that initial video and kind of keep that going, because it's just right now, I mean, unless I really cut back on this channel, there's no way I can even do more than once every 2 weeks. So just because especially the 3 other yards I'm planning on going to are in Ohio, so they're a couple hours away, and so it's going to be an all-day ordeal just to film, and blocking off a day to do that I'm happy to do, especially if they're going to actually get views. I'm again happy to go as much into this as people want to support it and the algorithm wants to support it, but yeah, it's going to be a little bit of a time commitment there, so going to start off slow, and if it takes off like wildfire, then maybe I'll go down to 1 car review a week on this channel, or cut back and just follow this wherever the success takes me. Whatever YouTube wants to push, I will hop on that train and go with it. So we'll see, because I do love doing everything. I'll always keep doing reviews in some capacity, I think, but it's getting tougher and tougher every day to do that. So if I can find a new niche where I have less competition, and I can, do something I still really love that's car related, and you guys are still enjoying it, and maybe it's more relatable for some of you versus, the regular, crossovers and stuff that some of you might not be excited about. It could be fun. So I'm excited for that. So, but thank you. I mean, I know so many of you, it's an hour-long video, and I'm sure most of you probably didn't even watch, the whole thing. I don't blame you. I don't have an hour to watch YouTube most of the time, but I just really thank you all for watching however much of it you watched, and just for supporting. I know there's so many channels out there these days. There's, so many people, asking for your clicks and all that. And so I really appreciate it. It means a lot. And I'm looking forward to your other additional feedback as I keep doing these, ways I can evolve it. I know someone already mentioned maybe it'll be a way of finding a project car, but I'm not doing a project car. I just don't have the time. It's bad enough driving to a junkyard and spending a day at a junkyard, but trying to find time to work on a car and all that would just be impossible for me at this point in my life, just being a dad, just being busy. It's a great thing if you're, a single guy or something, you got all the time in the world, you don't have other, commitments and things to worry about. You can spend all evening wrenching and all that, but I just don't have that luxury right now. But I'm excited for more of the junkyard stuff. And Hugo says, do you think they'll put the V8 with Tim as CEO in the Dakota? I guess you mean. That's a good question. I mean, with Ram these days, I wouldn't rule it out. The thing about the V8 for the Dakota, though, that I think if we're gonna see a V8 for the Dakota, it'll be for like a launch edition, or it'll be a 1 or 2 year thing, because I mean, again, I guess we'll see what happens, in the election in 2028. Honestly, even 2026 could kind of change the game a little bit. We'll see. But, I don't think they're going to be able to just gas guzzle forever and be able to just have no rules forever. I think we will have at some point an administration that says, hey, maybe we shouldn't just let you pollute as much as you want anymore, and, pull that back again. And they're going to have other powertrains. And I mean, Ram does still, they're still doing the Ram Charger. They're still doing the electric one. They're just not rushing those to market, but they are still going to come out with those. And so, I don't know what they're going to do for it. My guess is that our version of Dakota will be on the Stella platform, which means it'll be multi-powertrain. It's the same thing we're seeing with Cherokee and all these others. It's a very flexible platform. I'm guessing for that one, it'll be on the Stella frame platform, which is the truck version of that, and just shortened. So they'll probably just take Ram's, new platform here, chop that up, and shrink it down, which would give you the potential to have gas, have a Ram Charger kind of variant, plug-in hybrid, and also an EV maybe someday. And that would be good to future-proof themselves so that if we get an administration in 2028 into 2029 here that says, hey, we need to get back on track with the Biden era climate laws and stuff, then they'll have stuff there ready to go, so they don't get caught with product they can't sell or have to pay giant fines to sell in the future. So we'll see. But yeah, that's why I'm saying don't get comfortable with V8s. It's going to be a couple of years, and I think that's the most. It's a fun little reunion tour, like, hey, the band got back together, let's watch them do a couple more shows, and while they're still here, and then we all understand they're going to go away again. It's kind of just like a fun little redo. That's how I'm approaching it. Maybe we'll see. Maybe people will just not give a crap about the climate forever, and who knows. But I have to think that this is just a short-lived kind of thing. And Lance Watt says, I watched your review of the 2016 CTSV and your My Week With video. Great videos. I'm glad you liked them. Yeah, that was a real fun one. At that point, is one of the fastest press cars I think I had ever had. And I mean, it's also just an absolute blast to have any of those things. And CTSVs are really solid values these days, and such fun cars, as long as you can deal with the infotainment system. Some people hated it. I didn't have an issue with the Q system typically, but that's the only thing. Otherwise, fantastic cars. And Luke says, I have to deliver to the Bronx on Wednesday. I'm nervous about that. Luckily, the place is only half a mile off the interstate. Nice. I mean, yeah, the Bronx is pretty cool. I mean, obviously, you just have to know where you're going to go and stuff. And I'm sure with a truck, it's going to be tough. I hate driving in New York. So that component of it, at least, yeah, you're close to the interstate. So it'll be a quick on and off for you. But yeah, if you had to go any further into the city and stuff, that would have been a nightmare, because yeah, it's bad enough just driving a regular car. I can't imagine an 18-wheeler in New York City traffic. Oh man, that you'd have to pay me a lot of money to be doing that. That'd be tough. So best of luck with that, and keep our fingers crossed for you that it goes smoothly, Luke. And yeah, thanks for stopping by. And Stratus, thanks for stopping by as well. And he says, didn't realize the Junkyard channel went live. Just subscribe. Thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, that first video went live there on Saturday morning. And I'm also going to be experimenting with when I post, but I'm thinking that kind of a video, might make more sense to kind of do as a Saturday morning kind of, thing. I don't know. Just think about how I would, consume something like that. If I'm sitting down for an hour and I'm, just sitting in my boxers, eating breakfast or whatever, something like that could be, like a fun, casual kind of, morning kind of video. I think just something to kind of kill some time, so we'll see, versus, having it go live, lunchtime, because sometimes I do try and plan like, oh, well, if it's a shorter video, maybe I can catch people on their lunch break and things like that. But like hour-long video, obviously I'm kind of just like, all right, well, let's leave this for the weekend, but, yeah, thanks so much for the subscription. I appreciate that. And Luke says, I cross shop, but with different segments, like Civic Hybrid Hatch with Toyota Crown Signia with Volkswagen Jetta GLI. Yeah, and that's another great point. A lot of people do that as well. And that's something that, is a limitation of this channel, and that's why, I do, again, the one-on-one consulting to, help people that maybe do have varying interests and different things that I haven't talked about in the video or covered. How does this compare to this, that isn't typically compared? But you're absolutely right. There's so many people I've talked to. I feel like it's actually the majority of people when I talk to them about, hey, what are you considering? It's not the usual stuff. So yeah, it's tough. And that's one of the challenges for sure doing these kinds of videos. But it's kind of interesting and it's really fascinating to me. But I mean, I guess I'm kind of actually guilty of that as well because I was all over the place with both the Fiat and the Cadillac Lyric here. I mean, we were considering the Mach-E, which really is a class down and a little bit of a different. I mean, technically, it's kind of a different segment because you can argue that Lyric is kind of mid-sized. Chevy's been kind of weird in Cadillac with like what's actually compact, what's because for a while Blazer was being compared to Mach-E, but like Blazer's two is actually bigger, even though interior space isn't bigger. It's just if you're talking wheelbase, it's bigger. And anyway, so we were kind of all over the place with our cross shopping, and even with the Fiat. Whenever I got the 500e here back in February, like my initial goal was I wanted a Hyundai Ioniq 6, and that's not really comparable to the 500e at all. I just was hoping I can get a good deal on one and all that, and that was kind of what I was aiming for. And then whenever I realized it's not realistic to get a Ioniq 6 for anything under $200 a month, I'm like, okay, well, let's see some other stuff. And the Fiat was one of the top ones, but there's a few others too that I was considering before I kind of landed on that. So I mean, it's definitely and there's other people. I just saw Beth sent me there's some big time influencer that just like took her kids to go buy cars, and they just like went to like their favorite dealership. It just has like a big used car lot or something, and they're just like, okay, like they let them loose and they're like, pick what you like on the lot. And like, that has like zero research, zero understanding of what you're buying. Like the one thing they bought was a Ford Fusion Energy from 2013, which is the plug-in hybrid Ford Fusion that probably most people don't even know existed. And they're like, it can be gas or electric. I'm like, okay, you're buying a 12-year-old plug-in hybrid for like $8,000 or something. How's the battery health? All these things, maybe they glossed over it, but they don't seem like the type that's into cars that, understands that maybe that battery pack isn't, in great shape. Maybe you're not actually gonna get much range out of that. And, that vehicle didn't start with much range to begin with. They're like, it can be gas or electric, and it's this great thing. They really loved it. And I mean, if they are happy, they're happy. That's great. But it's just seeing videos like that kind of make my brain explode. I'm like, what? You just waltz onto the lot one day, you're like, oh, I like the color of that one, sign on the dotted line, and don't give it a second thought. I mean, for some people that's it, that works for them, and that's great. But we're all different with how we cross shop, if we cross shop, if we research at all, how we buy cars. It's a lot of it is very much an emotional kind of knee-jerk thing for some people, which is very not compatible with my type A brain, but I'm happy it works for some people. And let me see. Danny says, here's a car that was secretly a Honda, the 86 to 91 Rover Sterling 825 and 827 was a rebadged Acura Legend with English electronics. Why did they do that? That's like, of all the things to change, that's the one thing you shouldn't have changed. Like, and why do you need to change electronics in an Acura Legend anyway? Like, just leave it. Like, why do extra work and make it probably almost entirely worse than before? That I'll have to look into that. That's another funny factoid. Thanks for sharing, Danny. That's never knew about that. And Luke says, I saw a Volkswagen Phaeton and a Honda Del Sol custom painted matte dark red. Very cool. Nice spots. Phaeton. I haven't seen a Phaeton in years, so that's a really impressive one. And Danny says the Rover had major electronic issues. Yeah, no surprise. And Mike's saying that Savage Geese complained about the drivetrain calibration in their most recent video on the SQ5. Interesting. Okay, well, I'm glad that it's not just me. That takes some of the heat off of me. I'm not just being an annoyance to Audi. It's everyone else is also complaining. It's that's one of the things that's so mystifying, and this is also why reviewing is still important, and actual real reviewing, not just saying, hey, look how many cup holders, look how big the screen is, look at this, look at this, look at this, bye. Like that's not a review to me. But regardless, like actual real feedback is so important because you would think that these engineers, they've probably driven these things a million miles total or something, and they do these crazy amounts of miles on these prototypes and stuff, all this driving, all this time. And I mean, maybe that was something they were aware of and they just said, we're going to market with it this way or whatever. I don't know. But it just blows my mind that Jack and Mark can see, feel this. I can feel it immediately. Like we all just like the second we started driving these vehicles, we're like, this isn't well calibrated. Fix it. And like, why do I have to like highlight to Audi? Why is this broken? And like, why am I having to bring attention to this? It should have never left the factory like that. And I mean, they're not the only ones that do it. I complain about calibration and especially throttle calibration in a bunch of vehicles. Some Volkswagen Group, some others, screw up with this as well. Or like Mercedes can't get brake pedal feel good in their EVs. It's just horrible. And it's like, who signed off on this and said, yep, like, a whole group of engineers and everyone said, all right, yeah, we're happy with this. This is what we're going to ship to the customer. It's just, I don't know. I mean, there's so many smart people, and I mean, tons and tons of, insanely talented people are far smarter than myself who are all working on this stuff. And yet we still end up with results like that. And I mean, SQ5 is great in every other way. Like, I don't think I have a single other complaint with it other than the throttle calibration. But like, it's just like, how does this happen? And no one is able to give me a good reason for it. Like whenever I brought it up to the Audi executive, he's like, oh, he at least wasn't aware of it. Like I was telling him something that was new to him. Or he, just made it seem that way. I don't know. But like, it just, that kind of stuff really blows my mind. But that's why, again, we need to have this feedback, especially, with the throttle stuff like that. I mean, maybe they're just so focused on the EV side and that being perfect, that they just don't put as much effort into the other stuff. I don't know. I won't even try and speculate on how it gets out the door like that. But I hadn't watched Savage Geese's video, so I'm glad that it wasn't just me. I'll have to go watch their video to see how they complain about it, because I'm sure Mark did it in a far more entertaining fashion than I did. So I'm looking forward to that. Thanks for the heads up on that, Mike. And Vishal says, I've had my Jetta for a year. I'm used to the throttle and I can drive it smoothly. The only instance it's noticeable is if I stop and then need to go right away, it does hesitate. Yeah, that's typically the main issue. Even with this S5 I have this week, like the times where it misbehaves is usually a time where the car is trying to predict and know what I'm going to do and is trying to anticipate my next move. And if I throw it a curveball, that's typically where it gets thrown off, whether I am, like coming up, like I'm going to come to a full stop and then I don't come to a full stop or something. Maybe sometimes I catch it off guard there, or just other instances where, again, I can tell, I can really feel the car is like, okay, it's going into a program. Like I'm anticipating for, this stop light that's coming up, or I'm anticipating for this turn or whatever the case is. And it's expecting me to do one thing and then I do something else. And that's what really throws it. So maybe it's just over computerization where everything is just run by a program instead of just, throttle cable or something. I don't know if there's some of that that's maybe kind of cluttering up the response. I don't know. That's interesting. But I know you can't get used to it. Like you have Vishal and yeah, I mean, there are people that do say like, yeah, I notice it, but it's not the end of the world. And I learn it, I get used to it and it's fine. And that's why I tell people test drive stuff. Don't take my word for it. Just go see what you think about it. There's some things people think I'm being a giant baby about, and it's not a big deal. And there's other things where I don't complain enough, and people are like, this was the worst thing ever. How could you possibly say you like this? So that's why, it's always important to get your own take on it. Because as much as I can give you as much information as possible, it still just might not jive with, what you are looking for. And that's why I don't do the ratings and I don't do scores, because what I think about a car isn't necessarily what you're going to think about the car. And I just don't think that scores are helpful for that. And maybe Gaming says, are you watching Twisted Metal Season 2? Season 1 was very good. I haven't seen any of the seasons. It seems interesting. I've seen some of the commercials and stuff. And it seems like some of the cast is pretty cool too, but I've never sat down and watched it. I enjoyed the game as a kid, but we got so many shows and things. We're currently watching the 007 Road to a Million. If you guys have seen that, it's on Amazon Prime, not sponsored, unfortunately, but that's being a Bond fan is kind of funny because they go to a lot of the Bond like locations and have like amazing race style challenges. That's what we're working through right now. They just posted a new season of that. But even that, we have very little time to watch TV anymore. So it's going very slowly. I think there's like 8 episodes and we've been going through it for like 2 or 3 weeks now. But Raphael, thanks for stopping by. And maybe Gaming also says, I've had mine for over 2 years. It's a chill car. I get super good fuel economy in the Jetta. That's great. I'm glad you guys are enjoying the Jettas. I'm debating doing a regular Jetta. I can get one at the dealership number 1 Cochrane that I've been working with. They have a bunch of them. And that's a car I wanted to kind of review, but there's a lot of competition because on the launch event, they did GLI and regular Jetta drives. And so there's a bunch of the traditional reviewers that have already covered it. And I'm really trying to find stuff with less competition to perform, better for the videos and kind of fill niches a little bit more. So I don't know if I will get around to Jetta, but I would like to try a regular Jetta again because it's been, I think the llast time I had a regular Jetta was 2018 press car. So I'd like to revisit it because it sells really well and it's simple and it's exactly what people need right now. And I'm really happy that Volkswagen continues to offer that. Let me see. So Dave says, hey, do you see Tony Angelo did a junkyard video at the same time as yours? No, and I don't know who that is. But of course, it'd be like one of these things. I'll start doing it, and then I'll just get completely annihilated by competitors. We'll see. But I'll have to check that out. And thanks for letting me know, Dave. And Danny says GM holds the record for the largest production V6 engine. They made a 478 cubic inch V6 or 7.8 liter V6. It was in the GM 6500 series trucks and buses made from 62 to 74. That's cool. I didn't know about that either. Thanks for sharing. And Tully says, any news on the 26 Acura RDX? Did they get rid of the touchpad? Not to my knowledge. So, I mean, they did say they did like changes for 2025, which, I mean, Acura definitely takes the cake as far as Acura and Honda they really know how to pinch a penny more than anyone else in the car industry with like, they said the new HRV 2026 HRV is refreshed. And it's just that like the screen that was on the top trim is now, I think, standard. And I think there's new wheels. It's like, and they flew in media for like a reveal and everything. And it's like, what are you people talking about? It's the same thing. It's the exact same thing. They didn't bother, changing the headlights. They didn't bother, tinting the taillights. They didn't do any changes to the bumpers. So they've said that there's new stuff for the RDX for 2025. I don't think we're going to see any other enhancements for RDX until a next generation. And I don't know anything about a next generation either. I would assume that car is old. I mean, Acura can kind of stretch out generations a little bit too, but the last one came out in 2019. So if we're going into the 2026 model year here with the same carryover car, that's putting us at 7 years. So, or maybe even almost 8 really. So it's time. My guess is, I don't know if they've announced or if they've shipped 26 RDXs yet. I'm guessing it'll be a 27 for a new generation, but I haven't seen anything. So, unless, I hope they don't do this, but if they try and play off the new Acura RSX, which it pains me to say that, if they use the RSX as like the RDX replacement, and not do a gas version, I don't think, because Honda's not that invested in EVs, so I don't know. But I guess that's the stopgap in the meantime. If you want a fresh Acura in that segment, you go for RSX here, which I think is coming out in the spring, or maybe it's sooner. I don't know. So it's going to be, just more of the same, I think, for RDX here for a little bit. And I don't think anyone's seen any of the new ones spied or anything. So I have no clue when that's coming. It's a very good question. I wish I knew, but I think touchpad and all that is going to just stay the same for the foreseeable future. I guess they always could do some things. They bothered to, tweak the TLX a little bit and then kill it the very next year. So maybe they'll do something. I know nothing, though. I wish I had any news for you, but I don't know anything. I haven't heard anything, haven't seen anything in the rumor mill or anything. So I don't know. It's a good question. I am not too far from the R&D center in Ohio there. So every once in a while I'll see a camoed Acura, but haven't seen anything for RDX. I did see the Integra with a camo wrap but actually it was, I think whenever I was going out to get the Fiat back in February, I saw the camoed Integra, and now we've seen that, which is another example of, what you get a painted grill on some of the trims, and what else did they change? I don't think they changed anything. It's the same thing, like, it's basically the same thing, and yet it's a refresh somehow. No, it's funny. And sorry I missed that. Jordan, thank you so much for the super chat. I really appreciate it. He says Slate and Bolt both launched simultaneously in 2026. I thought Slate was 2027, and I thought Bolt was supposed to be this year, but I don't know what's going on with Bolt, because it seems like it's weird, and I don't know if they're just rehashing the old car, it seems, with a light refresh, but I don't know why it's taking so long if that's all they're doing. So I don't know what's going on with Bolt. And Slate, I think, I believe it's 2027. I could be wrong. That's what I thought I remember hearing. But yeah, it's gonna be interesting to see how both of those fare. I think Bolt will do really well. I'm hoping Slate does really well too, even without the tax credit help. I think it really does kind of tap into what a lot of people have been, kind of wanting, a bare bones simple car. But I think people expect that to be really cheap. And so it's really going to come down to what is the final price on the Slate whenever it does actually launch, and what that price is compared to everything else out there, at that point in time. And Linda, thanks so much for being a member for 3 years now. I really appreciate it. She says, briefly stopping by to say hi. Saw some cool cars on your junkyard video. I'm glad you enjoyed it, Linda. And thanks so much for stopping by, and I hope you enjoyed the video there. And yeah, I'm excited to see what new stuff I find here in another week or two. And let me see here. So Danny says that they did 192 horsepower and 371 pound-feet of torque in 1962. A more performance-oriented version called the 478M for Magnum, around 254 horsepower and 442 pound-feet of torque. Nice. Raphael says we won't be able to pollute forever, so let's enjoy it while we can. Yeah, yeah, I think it's we'll see. Maybe they come up with carbon capture, and it'll take all of the, responsibility off of anyone to to have any restraints, and we'll be able to just go ham and not worry about it. I don't know. We'll see. I mean, they're pouring a bunch of money into carbon capture and trying to find other ways, because I think a lot of people are realistic about the fact that, like, people aren't going to be able to come together on this, because they can't come together on anything. So, even the very planet we live on, we can't agree to help, protect and save. So, it's kind of going to be like, well, if we don't figure out carbon capture, we're never going to be able to save ourselves, because we're certainly not going to do it in all the other ways that we have at our disposal. So, and that's, I've been kind of torn about, I didn't get invited on the Ram launch, which is kind of interesting, because usually Stellantis invites me on most stuff. So I don't know what the deal is with that. I'm not losing sleep over it, but they did invite me on the V8 Ram, and I'm like, I could go to a dealer right now and do a V8 Ram. I honestly, like, I'm not excited about it. I'm just kind of bitter about the fact that they're, backtracking and invalidating all the stuff that they claimed, was great about the Hurricane motor, and just caving. It would be a car. It's kind of like the Cybertruck. It's kind of hard for me to review it in an unbiased manner. And if I can't approach it in an unbiased manner, then I just don't want to review it, because I don't want to do a biased review. And I think the Ram is just it'd be too hard of a vehicle to be objective on, because I'm too annoyed at Ram for just caving to the pressure and making a worse truck, because it is, in every way other than sound, it is worse than the Hurricane. And so it's just, yeah, I'm happy everyone else out there has been able to review it and not be bothered by it and cash in on the hype for the next couple of years, but I'm not going to ride that train, I don't think. And Sean says, thank you for the membership to Landswath there. Thanks for joining in here, Sean. Happy to see you in here, and I'll keep an eye out for any comments you have here going forward too. And Jordan, thank you so much for another super chat. I really appreciate that. He says Mrs. Go Electric posted that Harley Davidson is offering 9 to 11,000 off their electric motorcycles. Interesting. Yeah, I mean Harley's really struggling in all the ways, but especially the electric motorcycles. I mean, it's the same thing. I mean, I guess Harley could have, dragged their feet a lot longer because I mean, I don't think they get fined like, Stellantis was and stuff, but like, I don't know who thought that was a good idea. I would, think that'd be cool. And if I was into motorcycles and, was, looking for something that was electric, I mean, I'm sure it seems really cool from the little bit that I've heard about it. But it's like, again, you have to read the room. Like, who are your buyers? Are these typically open-minded people? Not the stereotype, but we're talking about Harley riders. Like, I mean, I'm trying to think of a funny, way of putting this, but like there that is an insane uphill battle to try and sell a Harley rider on going electric. I mean, it's the same thing as the Charger. It's the same exact thing. You have the same kind of clientele, and it's not going to go well. And I think Stellantis kind of had their back up against the wall, and also they had good reason because they were tired of again being the one that had the most horsepower but still always was losing in drag races and just not hooking up and not putting power down well. It's like, hey, we fixed all those problems. We've now put power down perfectly. We have instant response and we are killing it at the drag strip. But now all of a sudden Mopar people are about the experience and not about speed, which is a big shift for that group of people. But it's the same thing. Stellantis was trying to say, hey, look guys, this is a better way, let's get behind this. And I was like, nope, we don't want to change. And so I mean, Stellantis is a company that again, they got to survive. And I've said this already before, but it's the same thing with Harley. And so I think you're going to see the electric thing will probably not come back until it's insanely obvious that you can't avoid the EV thing. And once you maybe get some younger blood in who's more open-minded, then maybe you can kind of convince people to go for an electric Harley. If Harley Davidson sticks around that long, it doesn't get sold off to some other conglomerate or something, because they're again just in not good shape. But Harley was silly to ever try an electric motorcycle. As sad as it is to say, I'm sure it's probably better to ride in many ways, but just not going to work with that demographic. And let me see. Jorge, thanks so much for being a member for 41 months now. I really appreciate it. He says, saw a line of fancy 911 GT3 RSs, turbos, etc. on my way back from the Hamptons. But what turned my head? A really old Myers Manx. That's fun. Those are so cool to see. I saw something similar where it wasn't a Myers Manx, but it was just like one of the old like little T-bucket hot rods where it's like actually like a kind of like a bathtub kind of thing the guy's sitting in with a steering wheel and pedals, giant engine that's uncovered, the really old like style of hot rod. And it's like, man, that kind of stuff takes bravery with giant vehicles around you, and you got this tiny little thing that I mean, I'm sure it's a rush like no other, but it's a special kind of brave to be able to do something like that. Same thing with the Myers Manx. Sure, it's a huge rush though, and I think they'd be a blast off road. I'd love to take one out to the desert and go nuts. That'd be so fun. And cool, you're in the Hamptons too. I've never been. I've always wanted to go up there. Sounds really nice, but never been. And Immutable Dude, thanks so much for being a member for 15 months now. He says, best thing Harley Davidson did was the King of the Baggers Racing Series. Their large motorcycles can finally handle. Oh, that's cool to hear. I'm so out of the loop. I didn't know that was a thing. So that's awesome. And yeah, I mean, I think that'd be kind of one of the perks possibly of, I guess, maybe we'll have to wait for battery tech to evolve to make it a little bit lighter. But you would think that the EV thing, again, it's faster off the line for the motorcycles, but I'm sure a lot of them just, they're fine having their chill cruisers. I see John says go Indian. I've always thought those are really cool too. I've never ridden anything again other than riding in my buddy's front yard one time. That was it. But yeah, it's cool. I'm completely out of my element with motorcycles, though. I know next to nothing pretty much. And let me see here. Other questions. Getting back to where we were here. So Fook says time zone is a funny thing. Someone could be driving at night in Paris while at the same time someone is driving in the daytime in Tokyo, and Americans are driving in the 70s. Right? That's a, that's a good one, Fook. Absolutely. That's what we're trying to do. And Anthony, thanks for stopping by. I says, hope everyone had a great weekend. I hope you had a great weekend too, Anthony. Mr. 705 says, I like the junkyard video. I watched the whole thing. Thank you for watching the whole thing. It's a big time commitment, so thank you. He says, it's definitely something I'd put on to kill time and / something I don't need to pay much attention to follow along. Absolutely, yeah. And that's exactly how I package them. And I hope it can be just kind of a nice background thing for some people. And yeah, I'm glad you enjoyed it that way. And yeah, I'm debating how tight I want to edit those in the future, because I could really get aggressive with cutting it down, but I kind of just figured that kind of a video lends itself to a more relaxed editing style of just like, I don't have to cut out every and and I don't have to cut out 5 steps getting to the next car. Like I can kind of give you a little bit of I guess filler in between there, and it doesn't have to be boom, 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 like the reviews often are. So, and that's kind of nice to just kind of have it be a little more of a slower video. I'm really, again, that, and also the POV videos, same thing. Like I'm making it relaxing. I'm not trying to make it an exciting video. It's supposed to be a relaxing. Like I literally in the YouTube tag section, you can have different tags for videos. I have it as like tags are like sleep aid, relaxing, all these other things. Like that's the goal of those, like put it on and like fall asleep to it, or like that's the kind of stuff, just stuff to kind of calm everyone down, because everything is just again, it's just so crazy. So I can put out relaxing videos, since these are always so fast with me talking a million miles a minute, and with the reviews being very high intensity oftentimes, just trying to have, because I just feel like people just really kind of enjoy relaxing stuff and need relaxing stuff, and so I'm hoping to do a little bit more of that and try and kind of read the room on where we're at as a culture, and hopefully that can be something people enjoy. So I'm glad you enjoyed it, Mr. 705. And Vishal says, also my spot today was a first gen Forester. Nice. It's funny, with a lot of the cars you said you don't see anymore in the junkyard vid, I still occasionally see some. Not living in the Rust Belt helps. Yes, I think that's definitely part of it. And I also, I live in a suburb of Pittsburgh where I see mostly newer vehicles. If I was in downtown Pittsburgh, or I was in, areas that aren't as affluent as it is up here for many of the people around here, that skews what I see, and if I'm going into it, it's kind of fun, because anytime I do go out of my little suburban bubble here, it's like, oh wow, I haven't seen one of those in forever. But it's like, it's just because I finally got out of Lexus and Mercedes town over here. I mean, there's plenty of normal cars. It's not like I live in the Hamptons or something, but like it's just it's kind of, I think, geographical, even to a hyper local extent as well. So just because I don't see stuff doesn't mean that's definitely the reflection nationally. I'm sure lots of the things that I never see, you guys maybe see a little more frequently, depending on where you are, and again, how much rust takes away cars and how fast cars age and all that. That's another fun thing, being when every time I go out to California and stuff, seeing old stuff that still running, has a rough paint job, but it's still out there running. And here, you usually don't have much that's burned by the sun, but you have just rust everywhere. And Darnell says, if the Saturday release on the junkyard videos is light on engagement, maybe Tuesday or Wednesday at 10 or 11 would be good for the white collar crowd to have it playing in the background. Yeah, maybe. I kind of wonder how much of the white collar crowd enjoys junkyard stuff. I feel like that is typically more of like a blue collar kind of thing. Doesn't have to be. Obviously, I'm not very blue collar myself or anything, but I think that's kind of what I was kind of going for. Is it's not something people are going to be watching at work necessarily. That's why I kind of steer clear. But yeah, I'm still waiting. It takes a while to get the analytics whenever you don't have a ton of viewer data and history and all that. So it's YouTube still trying to figure out who is the viewer on that channel and what are their demographics. And I think I need to post more videos so they can see that it's not just the demographics on that one video, but actual channel viewers. And so once I get that kind of info in, then I can kind of make a more intelligent decision of what time do these people actually consume this video, and try and make a guess based on the age demographics and the location demographics, when to best post. So there's a lot of analyzing that goes into all that, and I just don't have that data yet. So we'll see. But yeah, I don't care when I post it, obviously whatever works best. And John says, "Hey Matt in the community, it's so great to see you again. Thanks for stopping by, John." He says, "When you do a flash with a Cobb access port, will it fail emissions? I'm thinking of getting one with a drop-in Canon filter, stock airbox, stick car, but I'm afraid of calling my Maryland emissions or failing my Maryland emissions. So please advise. I know you had an EcoBoost and used a Cobb flash. Did you run into that situation?" I'm trying to remember because that was at this point about 10 years ago. So in every state's different. So it depends on your states, obviously. Now, I think most states that do check emissions these days still just do OBD2 plugins, and I don't think they do the tailpipe actual test. The nice thing about the access port, if you're doing a drop-in filter, you don't need the tune anyway. So if that's all you're doing, then I would say to be on the safe side, just flash back to stock before you go in for emissions and then switch it back. But I don't know. I think typically, I could be wrong. I'm not an expert on this whatsoever. I thought my understanding of it was as long as your car is not throwing a check engine light or any kind of other code that would cause an issue, I think the OBD2 scanners in the inspection stations only look at codes, and that is, I could be completely wrong here, but I think that's the way I understand it as far as it goes. I haven't worried about that. And as far as the EcoBoost, I don't know if I kept it through an inspection period. And especially back then, I knew enough people that owned service shops that I wouldn't have had an issue probably with getting my car inspected no matter what I was doing. But I don't think I actually ever needed to even like call in a favor or anything, because I'm pretty sure I never had an issue. I'm trying to think of how long I had the tune on the EcoBoost, because I had that car for I think it was about 2 years. I can't remember how long it was running the tune, because I did stock tune for a while. Yeah, I don't know. I'd have to go back and even watch my own videos to maybe get a better gauge to refresh my memory, but I don't recall running into an issue. But I think, yeah, I would just, if you want to be on the safe side, you can also, these are the kinds of questions that are also really good for, whatever car it is that you have. If you have an EcoBoost or whatever, going on to the forum, subreddit, whatever, wherever there's a community, Facebook page, whatever, to discuss. I'm sure there's other people that, can give you advice, or even just like a Maryland tuner group or something, could maybe give you some advice on that. But hope that helps you a little bit. Again, just make sure you look into it a little bit more. Don't take my word for it. But hopefully you can get through that fine. Again, if you just have a drop-in filter, I think you'll be completely fine to just flash in worst case scenario, and then go back to it after. But best of luck with that there, John. And Vishal says, I got to ride in my neighbor's 24 Civic yesterday. I noticed it felt pretty low getting in compared to my Jetta. Have you gotten into any sedans recently where you felt this feels lower than I'd like? It's a good question. You're right, though. Civic definitely sits lower than Jetta. Jetta has one of the highest seating positions in the segment, I'd say. K4 is also really low. And I think K4, I'm fine with it. I like low cars, but for that demographic, that, mass appeal kind of car, it might be a little too low. I don't know. Again, it comes down to how limber you are and all that. But I think with its youthful kind of vibe and stuff, it's probably going to be fine. But I'm trying to think of other cars that have that kind of an issue. I don't know, because there's really nothing that has struck me as being super low other than sports cars. Typically, there was something though recently that I was in where I was like, oh, this is kind of surprising how low this is, but I can't recall what it was. The Mini has gotten lower, I think, as far as its seating position. The Mini Cooper, those used to be like a little bit higher, kind of like the Jetta. And I feel like they lowered it with this new generation. I could be wrong on that, but it just felt like I was really sitting down low and had like super high door sills and everything. So man, I'm trying to think of, I feel like there's another one though, and I can't think of what it is. But there was something where I was like, oh, like why is this so low? But it's been a while since I think I had it was a press car, I think. If I think of it, I'll let you know. But yeah, it's not very often that I come across something like that though. And typically again, it's correct for the buyer they're going for and the vibe of the vehicle, but there are a few instances where it's like, that's kind of weird. um, and also, Wheatman, thanks so much for gifting 5 memberships. I really appreciate that. And happy to see Jason was able to get one there and some other, I think, new names as well. So thanks so much for the generosity. And I hope we can get more people able to join in here as a result. Although we're doing a pretty good job here keeping up with all the questions here. But always like, yeah, giving the members the priority there once we get down to the wire in the end. We got another hour to go here. So let me see. Also, John says, would love for you to review. No one did a base Jetta. Interesting. Yeah. So, I mean, maybe, I don't know. I'll have to look. Maybe if I can get it like a 26 or something and kind of beat the rush to the next model year, because that's very much a thing in the car review world as well. If I can maybe do that before anyone else, then maybe that could be something that justifies it. So we'll have to see. Because, I mean, yeah, I'd like to review it for sure because I, again, have that passion for the cheaper stuff. And because it's mostly members in here, I mean, there's a few others, but this is coming out tomorrow and I'm just happy to share. I tracked down, I'm so happy, the number one Cochrane dealerships I work with, they actually, it's very rare, but they got in a manual Mazda 3 hatch, the new ones, or a new one. I mean, it's the same car for the past 6 years, but a new, 2025. And I was talking to the sales manager and he's like, we get like maybe 3 or 4 of these in a year. So it's very rare. So like, all right, I've been wanting to review a manual forever for the Mazda 3. I did a quick drive on it on the launch back in 2018, where I got like 15 minutes with a manual Mazda 3, and I got a little taste of it. And that video has done super well since, because there was, again, very little coverage on the manual because no one could get their hands on one. And so I was like, oh, like there were some other exciting vehicles I was thinking about reviewing, but I was like, no, I'm doing the Mazda 3 manual, because a lot of you have asked about those in the past, and I've just been wanting to do it just out of personal curiosity. I won't spoil the video, but it actually, I was pleasantly surprised. It was even better than I was hoping. I mean, it's not like a mind-blowing experience or anything, but like I was actually really happy with it. And these days, especially on the used market, yeah, I think I haven't checked in a while, but the last time I checked, you could get them pretty decently cheap. They're not like overpriced because of their rarity, it seems. So really nice little car, especially now. You can't get Corolla in a manual unless you go for the GR. You can't get, the Civic in a manual unless you go for SI. So if you want an actual hatch with a manual, and you'll see in my video tomorrow, it's the only manual hatch under $40,000 now. Because with 2026 pricing for Integra, it's now over 40 starting when you include destination, which is also kind of weird for Integra that it's gone that far up. I'm sorry, get your drinks ready. 40 grand, get yourself a GR Corolla instead of 200 horsepower Integra. I mean, I love the Integra, but not at 40 grand. Like, at this point, I feel like, I mean, I guess maybe some people are, and it's an Acura, so I guess it's a premium brand, but like, that's tough. I mean, to make people pay 40 grand for a Civic SI hatchback with the nicer interior is essentially what it is. It's a big ask, in my opinion, but Honda and Acura, their pricing has continued to really inflate, and we'll see how much they can keep doing that. But it's a shame that their stuff is consistently some of the highest priced in their segments these days. But anyway, so yeah, I'm excited. You'll see the Mazda 3 manual review tomorrow here. And let me see. So Michelle said you should do a base trim Jetta and showcase what you get for that price. That would be the goal, I think, is to try and do the base one. Because again, that's something usually other people can't do. So you're right. I mean, that would be a nice edge over everyone who has done. You're right about maybe just, yeah, if they've all reviewed top versions of the Jetta, show the base one. That's a good workaround. That's another good idea. So if I can find a 26 and or a base, yeah, maybe that's the way forward. I have my next review, I think, lined up for what I want to do after the manual Mazda. I'll keep that to myself for now. I maybe will share with you guys tomorrow in a member post, kind of, you know, what's coming here for the next month. And when I do have some gaps in the schedule, I'm figuring out, you know, what cars to pick for those. But that's a good idea. I appreciate that, Vishal. That's, yeah. I've been wanting to do more base models. And I kind of forgot that could be a kind of a cool edge to, you know, separate myself from the competitors. And so yeah, I need to do, maybe that's the key for Jetta. I'll do that. I appreciate that. Luke says, I wish they would up the 1.5 in the Jetta to 174 horsepower like the Taos from the 158 currently. Well, I mean, yeah, we got two owners in here. They can give you their thoughts on the power. Personally, though, I mean, that little motor in the Jetta, you know, I think is probably going to be fine. You know, the turbo is also a standout because most others in that, you know, lower, especially when you're talking base models and stuff, a lot of them aren't turbocharged. And so their motors, you got to really, you know, hit them hard and really ring them out in order to get the power. Versus the Jetta, you know, you got the turbo there, and it's a more relaxed kind of experience. And you got, you know, punchier response off the line too if you want it. So, you know, but yeah, it'd be nice to see a little bit extra horsepower, especially since, you know, with GLI, I don't think they have to worry about stepping on toes too much because 174 isn't, you know, like it's going to be that high. Let me see. Dave says Tony Angelo started his channel. Stay tuned after he left Motor Trend. I think he's in your area. Interesting. I have no clue who he is. I'll have to look into that. Yeah, because if he's in my area, then he's also gonna be doing Rust Belt stuff. So we'll see. You know, I mean, there's always different yards and stuff, so we can all hopefully thrive together. But I mean, maybe I'm ahead of the curve, and more people are going to be doing junkyard stuff. We'll see. That's funny. And Nicholas says, "Hey Matt, did you hear about the NX250 stopping production? Mom and Dad were actually saving up for one. They're leaning towards the new front-wheel drive 350H now. That's the cheapest option." I hadn't heard about that. I heard about how 350H is going front-wheel drive now, and that just was announced. But I didn't hear about the 250 stopping production. Yeah, I'll have to look back. I was just on the Lexus press site the other day, and I heard about the front wheel drive thing, but for some reason I didn't see about the 250 ending. But yeah, I mean, I think I can kind of understand if Lexus is, you know, getting rid of it. I'm assuming, you know, that's official. If they are getting rid of it, I can understand it because, you know, it is very much, you know, a less luxurious experience. I think what you're also seeing, NX is based on RAV4. And so as a result, you know, they're sharing powertrains and stuff. And, you know, because RAV4 is going all hybrid, my guess is, again, they just have to go maybe all hybrid there for NX. I don't know. Because there is still regular NX 350, right? But does that also run? I'm a little foggy because there's so many versions of the NX. Is there, because there's nothing more? Yeah, the 350 does the turbo motor, right? So I mean, the turbo one, yeah, so that's safe. So if the 250 is just a naturally aspirated RAV4 motor, that going away makes sense then, because yeah, that would just be, you know, because that they're probably kind of phasing out that motor for that platform. And if it's done in RAV4, then they just got to cut it for NX. And I'm sure we'll see a new NX here in the next year or two as a result. You know, that gets the same kind of tweaks as the RAV4. Same powertrain options probably and all that. But yeah, that's unfortunate because I mean, it was a nice low cost option. It really lowered the price of the NX nicely and helped it to be a nice undercutter. So without that advantage, you know, it makes it more competitive though. Whenever you have someone who doesn't know the hierarchy and stuff, you know, goes to a Lexus dealer, hops in an NX 250, being like, oh, this will probably be fine. And they're like, oh man, this is not luxurious. I was just in, you know, the RDX with, you know, a turbo motor, and I was on and this and that, and this just feels really slow. And maybe they're trying to kind of up the perception of NX and elevating it, I guess, you know, so that it's not, you know, a little underpowered to some people, maybe. I think it's fine. And again, a lot of people don't care about power. So I think for those people, it's great to have that option. But there may be some people that just, again, can't cut through all the different variants and get confused and then just end up coming away unimpressed just with the 250. I don't know. But it's mostly just, yeah, I'm sure a production thing. And Luke says, I heard no manual for the new Prelude. Deal breaker for me. Yeah, I mean, here's the thing about Prelude. I mean, right now, I already was convinced it wasn't going to be manual just because they're using that hybrid powertrain, and it sounds like there's nothing in the works to have a manual hybrid again from Honda. So that ship is definitely sailed, and that's not coming back. I think even though they did it previously with CRZ, but I think what we will see, and I think there's people are already speculating that at the Tokyo Auto Salon that's coming up here, I think in November, that it looks like there's 2 cars under sheets in their teaser image already. And I can't remember. They said the one is going to be something, but then they're thinking the other one might be a Prelude Type R they're going to show off just to like head off all the complaints, although it may cannibalize early Prelude sales. I don't know, but I think, like any of these things, they don't show you the top version usually right away. I'm pretty sure we're going to get a Prelude Type R, and I'm pretty sure that car will be Type R powertrain, which means it'll have the manual. So I think if you want a manual Prelude, wait for the Type R. You'll have all the power you want. You'll have the manual, and it'll be hopefully exactly what people that are enthusiasts want from a Prelude. And then you have to keep in mind that this regular Prelude is going to be for the same people that buy regular Integras. That's not the enthusiast. The enthusiasts are supposed to buy the Type S or go for the manual Integra or whatever. But the large majority of Integras that are sold are CVT, regular Integras that people say, oh, wow, this is a really nice big hatch, and it's premium, and it's cheaper than the Audi A3, Mercedes CLA, and the BMW 2 Series Grand Coupe, so I'll go for this. And it's that, that is who that car is supposed to be for. It's not for, Fast and the Furious. It's for those people. And so I think, that's going to be the reminder. Again, everyone's going to be pissed off whenever all those specs come out on Prelude. And it's going to be like, I've been saying this for a year. Like it's going to be underwhelming if you are, someone who's an enthusiast. Now, I understand it's a coupe, so you would think they'd be going for the enthusiast market immediately. But again, to have Type R, typically you would think they have to have a regular version as well. And that's going to be the car for people who miss Civic coupes, who had a Civic coupe. It didn't have to win drag races. They just liked Civic coupes. And I mean, it's, there's a lot of people I still see, like older ladies, that are driving around in, like Camry Solaras and, things like that every once in a while. There still is a lot of people who do enjoy a two-door, not a ton of people, but there's a market there. And I think, no one else is really serving that in the mainstream segment very well. You have the hardcore stuff like G86 and BRZ, but you don't have anything a little softer and more casual. And I think Prelude will be that. And then again, they'll say, everyone just wait, we got Type R coming. And I think if they are actually showing up at the Tokyo Auto Salon, then I think they've learned their lesson from Integra. Because I think the problem was they launched Integra, everyone thought that it was going to be, everyone remembers Integra Type R. They remember the old one, from, with the big wing and stuff from the 90s. That's the Integra people think of. People don't think about the 4-door hatchback regular Integra that was always just a nicer Civic that they sold tons of all through the 90s and the 2000s, like that, or I guess very early 2000s. But that's what it always was. And I was always confused why everyone else was annoyed and confused about Integra, because that's the Honda, and Acura, to their credit, like they absolutely nailed historically what that car has been, and they didn't change the formula. And so I think Prelude's going to be kind of the same way. You look at the old Preludes, they had some cutting edge stuff. They were one of the first to do 4-wheel steering. And, they did do some other really cool, kind of things, but, a lot of Preludes were just sold to regular people that weren't enthusiasts. Now the ones you see that are driving around are driven by enthusiasts because they're the only ones that have bothered to keep them alive. But, I'm sure you don't hear the stories from all the random regular people. Oh yeah, I had a Prelude in college, and it was a fun road trip car, and I was able to fit my guitar in the back, or just regular random stuff. And people that weren't, again, pretending they were in the Fast and the Furious. So I think hopefully Prelude will do well. I mean, it's definitely a harder sell than Integra because it's, you know, not as practical. I mean, it is a hatch though still, so that's going to be great. But you know, I think people just need to approach it with the right expectation, and I think a lot of people are just already setting themselves up for disappointment. I mean, that's cars in 2025 though. You know, everyone, you know, online hates stuff, and then, you know, whenever it actually comes out, you know, the real buyers are the ones that are a judge of that car's success, like Integra. Everyone hated Integra. Oh, it's going to bomb. No one's going to buy it. And now it's the best selling thing in its segment. You know, so there's that kind of thing where car companies take the heat. They know people are going to be giving them crap for it, but they trust their numbers and their analytics, and they know this should be good. And it oftentimes is. Sometimes they get it wrong, but, you know, that's kind of the other side of it that you know, a lot of people just are like, well, why doesn't it have 400 horsepower? And it's like, because it's not supposed to be that, you know. Anyway, let me see. Lancelot says, regarding Ram, I do think the V8 sounds worlds better, but in my opinion, the Hurricane is a better motor. Just my 2 cents. Absolutely. Well, I mean, like I said, V8 always sounds awesome. You know, there's no debate there. I see also Raphael says, Matt, you're killing me. Sound's not a bad thing. Yeah, I mean, I'm not against the sound thing. I understand the sound is great, but that is the only benefit of that truck. You can maybe argue reliability is better as well. You know, but that's, I mean, the Hurricane motor seems to be really overbuilt. So once they get through the electrical issues, I think, which also will plague the V8 version, by the way, because it's that new electrical system. So that electrical system is completely separate from the powertrain thing. So, you know, if people are buying V8 2026 Rams hoping it's going to solve any of the glitchy stuff that you've had with other, you know, Rams of this new-ish kind of generation, that's not going to fix it. It doesn't go to the old electronics. It's still the same new thing. And that was the big hurdle for them to bring the V8 onto this new truck, is that, you know, even though it shares so much with the old one, it's an entirely new electrical system, and having to convert everything to work with the V8 was the whole holdup. And so once they put enough manpower on that and prioritize that, you know, they got it done, and it's possible, but that was the biggest thing. But anyway, so, you know, beyond sound and reliability, there's no other benefit. It's slower in every way, less horsepower, less torque. I think it tows less. It's going to be a worse towing experience without the turbos probably as well. You know, and I mean, the V8 maybe will get better fuel economy in certain instances as well. We'll have to see, but yeah, you know, I just, this is why I love stuff like Ioniq 5N. It has all the sound without the emissions. And I think that's, to me, that's the way I want to go forward. I want to have the fun, but I don't want to have, in my opinion, the guilt of that. You know, I mean, again, you can have fun with your loud vehicles, and especially if you're driving them sparingly, you know, it's not like you're contributing a whole lot of emissions there. But, you know, whenever we're talking about trucks that you're churning out hundreds and hundreds of thousands of these things a year, you know, that's the segment that is most important if we're trying to actually improve things. And I mean, maybe, you know, a lot of people don't think we need to improve these things, obviously. And, you know, I'm not going to get into that whole debate, but, you know, just for me, that's why it's hard for me to support, because yeah, the sound's great, but, you know, at what cost? You know, that, and again, that's again where I think, you know, motorcycles are great because obviously very little emissions with all the great sound you have. I think this is why, you know, having weekend cars is great, and have those, you know, be crazy, and then have, you know, something that's fuel efficient or EV or whatever, you know, for your commuting, and that saves you a bunch of money anyway. So you're not, you know, guzzling down 15 mpg everywhere you go, you know, for all of your driving, you know, 7 days out of the week. You know, there's other ways to work around it to mitigate that, you know, but just to me, whenever it's in the trucks, it's, you know, just it's the same thing as, you know, all these other things that are just I don't know, just things where, you know, when we're talking about large amounts of vehicles, this is why the exact opposite is Toyota going all hybrid for RAV4. Like, that's huge. That reduces emissions massively. All those people are instantly converted to hybrid drivers. And just that one vehicle, which sells almost 500,000 units a year, that one vehicle going, I don't know how many are non-hybrid. I think they said hybrid's almost 50%. So you say half of that, almost over 200,000 RAV4s go from being, somewhat efficient four cylinders to really high efficiency hybrids. I mean, that's going to help cities on its own over time. And I did a whole article on CarBuzz about this, about how the RAV4 going all hybrid is a really big deal, more than even Toyota's playing it up. And so like those types of things make me excited. Like, hey, look, like you're not making anyone compromise. Like, you don't have to plug it in. You don't have to do anything special. It's just a regular gas car you fill up and drive, but like that is going to have an enormous improvement. And that's why, like Toyota has, some fun stuff and gas guzzling stuff, and, Tacoma gets terrible fuel economy and all these other things, but like, then you do something like RAV4 hybrid for everything, and that is hugely helping that. And so it's like you look at the big picture on a company level, Toyota's massively reducing their emissions. Camry going fully hybrid, another example, 200,000 plus units a year there, all automatically instantly dropping their emissions. And I did the math for the CarBuzz article. You can go, if you just Google CarBuzz, why RAV4 hybrid is a bigger deal or something. I did the math. I mean, we're talking like cutting out, like if the entire country stopped buying gas for multiple days, like that's what Toyota has done by going all hybrid, like the amount of gas that we're reducing our consumption of and the emissions as a result. It's huge. So like there's ways to do this without, telling people you have to go buy an EV or something, and I think, Ram could have just made those kinds of things, make it a V8 hybrid, and, do some other advancements. You can have the fun sound and also, try and reduce your emissions and still make some progress there. And I know they wanted to get it out fast and they wanted to just cash in and stuff, but like, I'm hoping, we have this little stopgap, we have this little blip in history where it's a free for all for emissions. And I'm hoping, Ram says, okay, look, and same thing for Charger or anything, take your pick. Okay, look, people really want the V8 sound. How do we make this efficient without making them give up their V8 sound? And this is why I think the best course of action for a next generation Hellcat is take that naturally aspirated V8 and electrify it instead of supercharge it. Give it a plug-in hybrid. And we see this already with M5. We see this with the Europeans that are doing this. And people gave it crap for the extra weight and stuff, but I think oftentimes, like usual, the Europeans are kind of ahead of us here. And I think that's an area where we're going to see that kind of stuff trickle down to eventually stuff like hopefully Charger and that. I hope Motor Trend had an article years ago that was the rumored direction, and maybe they changed it since, but I think that makes, to me, the most sense. Give people their V8, but then turn it off whenever you're sitting in a red light, or, at least give them the option to turn it off and have that extra efficiency and, make the extra power come from EVs. And then it's, electrification is, I think, a great tool in the performance tool belt if we use it in a way that doesn't piss people off. And there's a way to do that without, making it some soulless fax machine that's on wheels. You can have it be fun. And I think they did a pretty good job with Charger Daytona. I know I'm like one of 5 people on the planet that thinks that, but like, I think that it was just a little bit too much too soon for their demographic. And I think, I'm hoping for next generation, they do some actual work there instead of just phoning it in with making the same old crap and, being happy with a next generation TRX getting, 11 MPG. I hope we actually kind of improve things, in the future. But we'll see. Again, it comes down to the politics, comes down to what people are willing to buy and all kinds of other stuff. Let me see. Jordan, thank you so much for Super Chat. He says, Whataburger partnered with Ford and GM for employee discounts for new vehicles only. Well, it's cool that they partnered. That's awesome. Any way you can get a discount definitely is always good news. And not sure if you're in the market, Jordan, but absolutely take advantage if you can. There's all kinds of stuff, especially like, Chevy Trax is a great little option. And you can get a nice discount on one of those. That'd be great. I think that's such an impressive vehicle for the money. Even, Maverick and all that, as you guys are well aware, great choice too. And thank you again for the super chat there. And I wish more companies would do those kinds of partnerships. You would think it would be, very popular and kind of benefit everyone. And YH, thank you so much for super chat. He says, I just cannot rev my Mustang GT whenever I spot a thought. I don't know. Oh, go ahead. Sorry. He says, I just cannot stop revving my Mustang GT whenever I spot a thought. Sorry, I'm still misunderstanding. Sorry for the this is the lingo you don't hear, he says. Gotcha. Well, I'm glad you enjoy your Mustang. Still hope you're still enjoying it here, and yeah, saving for the GT 500 or whatever. Thanks for stopping by, Edge, and thank you for the super chat as well. And let me see here. So Jordan says, if Harley has a Tron Edition EV bike, I think that would sell. That would be cool. I don't know if anyone actually does want a Tron bike, or if they just want something that looks like a Tron bike with a giant engine that's super loud or something. But I think, yeah, if someone made a legit Tron bike that was electric and sounded like the ones in the movies do, I think maybe that would do well. Probably not with a Harley crowd, but with somebody. Maybe someone else should try that. Maybe Kawasaki or something instead. But yeah, it'd be cool to see. I'd love it, man. I'd like lose my mind if I saw a Tron bike for real on the streets. That'd be so cool. And let me see. Vishal says, same for me. I live in an affluent suburb of Raleigh. You still see occasional oldies driving around among X7s and G-Wagons. Nice. Well, I'm glad you see a few. I guess it really is just a Rust thing then, because, yeah, I very rarely see anything older than, honestly, 2010 or even like, yeah, maybe every once in a while I'll see something that's closer to like 2005. But like if I see anything from the 90s, it's like, oh, wow, like that's a sight to see. And Immutable Dude says, APR tuning for my Jetta, I was able to toggle between stock 91 and 93. Yeah, I think you can. Yeah, I think most usually do that. I know Access Port for Cobb does have multiple off-the-shelf tunes, including a stock map you can flash back to. So yeah, hopefully that'll be the way you can get around that, John. And let me see. He says, thank you so much for the feedback. My best wishes to you always, and thank you always for all you do. Well, thank you, John, for watching. I really appreciate that. You know, as always, I couldn't keep doing this if people quit watching. So I very much appreciate all the support. And Jason says, heard my name, I thought it was me. Sorry, Jason. Yeah, unfortunately, it's the other Jason there that got the membership. But if you have signed up for membership gifting, hopefully at some point your name will get picked. I don't know how YouTube does it. It seems like it's completely random and doesn't make a whole lot of sense, but hope we get one soon there, and I'll keep an eye out for the questions nonetheless here. That's why it says, I can't remember for certain, but I think Watch JR Go reviewed a base Volkswagen. Sadly, I can't remember which model it was. Gotcha. Yeah, I'll have to do a little bit of research here and see. And Alex says, hi, hope you're doing well, Alex. And Waitman says, save the manuals. I agree. Yep. Let me see. Lance Wath is saying hi as well here. And Darnell says, Tony Angelo caters more to the tuner crowd. He was a pro formula drift driver from 15 to 18 years ago. Oh, that's cool. Awesome. Nice. Well, yeah, I mean, so maybe he'll do more of the JDM kind of stuff, which I love too. I did a lot of that, in this video too, but I also am sentimental for, those American cars of the 90s and 2000s and 80s, even, as you saw in that video too. So that's cool. And Alexander says, what's up? How you doing, Alexander? Hope you're doing well. And Jorge, thank you so much for the very generous super chat. He says, can you comment on the interiors of older cars like the ones from your new Junkyard series compared to new interiors, pros and cons? Thanks. Absolutely. Yeah, it's kind of fun, going into the junkyards and seeing, some of these, just the interesting designs. Like I was, one of the videos, or one of the vehicles, in the junkyard video was the like Infinity M35, which has the whole like big bump out of like, it almost looks like a chest of drawers or something you have. And, it's kind of interesting too. Like, one of the old things I spotted, I think it was one of the old Cadillacs or the Buick Riviera, I think that I saw in the yard, where it had a digital dash, and seeing how that was a fad. And then people want an analog back, and maybe it'll be different this time. I know certainly the cost cutting is more aggressive, I think, this time than it was even back then, which even back then was still rough with cost cutting, but I don't know. I'm still on the fence about whether screens, like especially gauge cluster screens, are here to stay, or if, I think that because of the smartphone component and stuff, I think that the in-dash screens are certainly here to stay. Now, if they've changed, they, end up evolving to be something a little bit different, we'll have to see. But I think, with the gauge clusters, I could see, I think Bugatti's already kind of predicting this, where, Bugatti obviously is a very niche kind of thing, but they're saying, like, with their cars, it needs to work in 25, 30, 50, 70 years. And screens, might not last. And so that's why they're like, we need to have things that are fixable without just remanufacturing something, or we need to have stuff that's, that's why we don't see screens even in the new Tourbillon. There's no, I think you can get like an add-on screen, but it's not needed in the car. And this is why, Chiron never had one, aside from the little thing in the gauge cluster there. But they're really heavily focused on, like, we need to have switches and knobs and gauge needles and all that kind of stuff. And I could see, especially in the exotic world, actual gauges and actual switches and stuff becoming more and more sought after. I mean, Pagani's still been doing this for a long time, and the craftsmanship of physical things you can touch is very important. And I think they also have to make that stick around and be desirable, because if they don't, and if everything becomes a digital experience, it's really hard to make that, a premium thing. Whenever every bolt in a Pagani is titanium, if you have less switch gear that you're touching this titanium that you can be impressed by, and you're interacting with a screen, then what makes that special? What makes that exotic? What makes you feel like you're doing anything different than someone in a Camry or something? So I think that's, but I certainly can see that, the craftsmanship and the hand build kind of stuff, like that is all, I think, going to definitely keep away a lot of the tech and a lot of the high end stuff. And that will trickle down, I think, eventually to the Lamborghinis and the Ferraris and stuff like that as well. But as far as, old interiors, a lot of it's just kind of fun to see, the way things were. And it is refreshing, the simplicity of them, the ease of repairability, and all these types of things, not having to pull out an entire dashboard to get to something. There's a lot of redeeming qualities there. And so, yeah, I mean, that's really all I can say. It's, it's just an interesting switch, and we'll see how long it lasts. But yeah, it's really hard to predict, where we go. I do think that screens, you can only go so big before it becomes, everyone has a limit. I mean, most of you probably already reached your limit for where you want to be from a screen standpoint. But, like, even for, the average person, I feel like we've gotten pretty close to reaching that limit. And so it's like, okay, well, where do you go from there? Because, the car companies always need to be like, oh, we have a bigger screen, we need to do this. It's always, one-upping yourself. And whenever you kind of reach the limit of that, it's like, okay, well, now what do we do? And so I think that's going to be kind of one of the new challenges. So we got another floating cat here. That's gonna be one of the other floating continuing challenges here in the future is, where do you go with some of that stuff? And if you've reached the limit on screens, do you then make something else the focal point of the car, or what? But I think, we're getting more and more people pushing back on, driver distraction, and that really being a problem. And I think it's going to get even more of a problem if we have, more and more screens getting bigger and bigger and more distracting and having more things in them. So I don't know. We'll see what happens, though. We may even just get to a point where we get so semi-automated with driving that it doesn't matter anymore. I think that's the current thinking with car companies as well. We have all this driver assistance stuff. So even if you're a worse driver because you're going to poke around on a screen, it's fine because the car is going to catch you and help you out, So I don't know. But it's fun to see the old interiors for sure. And yeah, it is fun to see, also stuff like cloth coming back. This is one thing I was really excited about with Volvo with the EX30 that I just reviewed. They're saying, okay, well, like, let's not do leather for, sustainability reasons. And so they're saying, well, what can we do that's premium? And they've, gotten this new woven wool, and, it's a high quality fabric, and it feels nice. It's durable. It's premium feeling and all that, but it's just a nice cloth, at the end of the day, essentially, but I think that's a fun way to kind of explore what is luxury and what are people willing to go with, and it's like, okay, are people going to buy a Volvo that doesn't have leather seats, because that's usually an expectation with, luxury cars. And so all those little things I think will be the new little pioneers of, where does luxury go, and where do interiors go and everything eventually, because all this stuff does eventually trickle down. But it'll be interesting to see where it goes. And thank you, Jorge, so much for the super chat. And Jordan, thank you for another super chat as well. He says, is Toyota lending their hybrid tech to anyone else? Yes, Mazda right now, Subaru. I think those are the only two that I'm sure of, because CX-50 hybrid is all Toyota powertrain. And as far as Subaru still has the physical all-wheel drive. They still have, it's different. They obviously have the Boxer motors hooked up to it, but they're using the electrical stuff from Toyota. So different applications there, whereas the Mazdas seriously just kind of copy and paste, like RAV4 hybrid, powertrain shoved into the underside of a CX-50 and call it a day pretty much. There's little tweaks, but essentially that's what it is, So but I think that's the extent of it. Maybe there's someone else I'm not thinking of. But yeah, I think that's it. Toyota also sells, their V6 to Lotus for the Emira, but that's not hybridized. So I think that's it. And thank you for the super chat again, Jordan. And Raphael, thank you so much for a super chat as well. He says, still not ready for an electric car except for an e-tron GT, but if someone comes out with a Tron bike, I'm buying it that day. Awesome. Well, I don't know why anyone's been waiting. You would think someone would have, and especially with Disney loving doing their like marketing partnerships and stuff. They missed a golden opportunity to try even something as a limited run. I think yeah, I would assume people would like that. Maybe not. I don't know. But I'm glad you're excited about the idea, Raphael. That would be cool. And thank you again for the super chat. And yeah, totally understand about the EVs. And yeah, it's like I said, I think that's why I love Toyota and companies like that. They meet you where you are with every form of powertrain. And YH, thank you so much for a super chat again. He says, did you see the Ford CEO say the Mustang will never be electric? I guess he doesn't know about the Mach-E. Yeah, he said a similar thing last year, and I remember just like having a field day with it in the weekly update. Just like, what is this dude smoking that he's, saying there's no electric Mustang? Especially because, Ford really, really drove it home hard that was a Mustang. It's like you slap their mother in the face if you say it's not it's not a Mustang. They were really like super intense about it. And then now it's like he doesn't remember the Mach-E is in his lineup or something. He says, and Mach-E is selling. Yeah, Mach-E is selling great. It's selling way more than regular Mustang, which isn't much of an achievement. But Mach-E, has been one of the better sellers, especially before GM came onto the scene hard. Now GM's kind of taking their lunch, but Mach-E still does sell very well. So, yeah, I don't know what he's talking about with that. I guess, he's focusing on the two-door one. But even that is, I think, a dumb thing to say because, he's now playing fortune teller. And, also he might not be the Ford CEO forever. And so to say it'll never be electric, I think it's honestly just pandering to the people that like Mustang that are worried about that. I think it's, reassuring them and being like, hey, we're on your side. We saw Ford pivot to this pretty fast after the election with really driving home the point, hey, we already have the V8 in the F-150. We never got rid of it. And it's the base motor now and rah V8, for life or whatever. And that has been like, so I think everyone there, they have their goals and stuff, but I think at the end of the day, they're selling, they're marketing, they're going with wherever the wind is blowing. And right now the wind is blowing in, screw EVs. And so that's, they're coming out with this new electric truck. They're talking about this new electric platform. So they're not saying screw EVs, but like when it comes to stuff like Mustang, they're smart enough to know, hey, if we come out with a two-door Mustang, people are going to be pissed about it if it has an electric powertrain. So, let's pretend like we're, anti-EV in the context of Mustang and go with that crowd, and that's probably, again, the smart way to market it, but it's just incredibly short-sighted because if Mustang is going to continue to be a thing, it has to go electric someday. You can't sell a brand new gas car forever. We will eventually make the transition, whether it's in 15 years or 50 years, there will eventually be no other way to sell a Mustang but electric. it's going to come at some point, so it's just a stupid thing to say in my opinion. But again, he's known for saying some off the wall stuff, and again, I'll leave it at that. But yeah, that was kind of funny. And I see Jordan also says he's hoping that Ford, the future CEO, puts the Ford Lithium into production. Yeah, maybe once management changes, we'll see. But he also says, YH says they should also make the Ford CEO. They should make me the Ford CEO. I'll make Mustangs great again. Yeah, I guess you'll have the drag racer highway special. But I mean, I think, again, they're doing what their buyers want. We're got a supercharged V8 version coming here. Sounds pretty soon, and they're going to keep doing the same things they always did. That's the key, as we saw with the Cracker Barrel thing. Don't change. Do not change. Whatever you do, don't try and improve. Don't try and progress. Don't change. And if anything, go backwards. That's the only kind of change that's going to be acceptable here for the next 3 years, I think. So I think that's the message to CEOs. Don't touch it. Just leave it as it is. And let me see here. Getting back to the other questions. Where were we? Michelle says, took our Lexus TX in for the first service yesterday. Great experience at my dealer. They didn't have an LC500 in stock that I could stare and drool at, though. That's unfortunate. But I'm glad it was a good experience. Lexus dealers are always really highly rated for their service departments, so I'm glad that yours is good. And I think that's one of the reasons why Lexus does so well, because they really do seem to nail the service component very well. I think that's one thing that Genesis is still working on and fixing. And I was just actually... I was stuck in traffic the other day, and I was sitting in front of our local Hyundai and Genesis dealer, but it's literally a Hyundai dealer that's kind of unimpressive looking on its own. And then they have this, it's almost, I don't know if it's an actual banner or if it's a just not very fancy sign, but they have a simple Genesis sign, but it's the cheapest add-on. And it's the cars and the product are so impressive, but they gotta pump money into the dealers. And I know the dealers don't want to invest in it for whatever reason. And there was a bunch of backlash because Genesis was going to push pretty hard to force dealers to make their own dealerships that are standalone Genesis locations and make them super impressive. And a lot of them just are not wanting to do that. And so it makes it hard to sell a luxury experience when you got to buy out of a rickety little Hyundai dealer that's, hasn't been updated itself in 20 years or more. And I think especially around here, there's a giant opportunity. If someone came out with an actual impressive Genesis dealer in the Pittsburgh area, because I don't think we have any of the new Genesis buildings that they've been trying to put up. I mean, you would just probably sell way more in this region. And it's just right now, it's you got to come in for the car and know that you love the car, but don't expect a premium experience otherwise. It's a shame. And Alexander says they have so many cars that compete with each other, like the pointless Corolla Cross. I think the Corolla Cross is pretty good, though. I mean, it's I think it's a really nice option for the hybrid crowd, because you have a hybrid that actually has basically 200 horsepower, gets great fuel economy, and is a nice package. They made some nice little tweaks here for 2026, like I covered when I was at Toyota's headquarters a few months ago. And so, I think Corolla Cross has its place. They don't really sell super well around here because this is Subaru country, but whenever I get out of Pittsburgh, oftentimes I see a decent amount of them. So I think it's been a decent hit for them. But I mean, Toyota does have a lot of product, and maybe a little bit too much in certain areas, especially when we get to the off-roady SUVs, where there's so much overlap with 4Runner and Land Cruiser and everything else. But I think Corolla Cross has a place, because before that they said CHR, which wasn't very impressive, and so this kind of replacing that was a better fit for what that segment wants and needs. And so I think Corolla Cross, it gets a little pricey sometimes, and it's you could probably just get a RAV4. That's always the problem with the cheap stuff, is it's not that much more to go for the bigger seller mainstream one most of the time. And Ryan says, some Honda buyers miss the normal coupes. My mom has been driving Accord coupes for over 10 years, and she wants that new Prelude from what she sees so far. That's awesome. And so thank you for supporting the point there. That's exactly what I'm talking about. Those kinds of people that yeah, just like those coupes, and are excited for the Prelude. So I'm hope your mom continues to like what she sees there with it, and I hope it's a good fit for her. It sounds like you'll probably in hybrid Civic powertrains, you get 50 mpg and a cool little coupe that also has better handling. It's going to have Type R front suspension. It sounds like, and some other nice little improvements. A Sport Plus mode for the powertrain, so it's a little sportier and stuff. I think it'll be nice for what it is. So as long as they price it right, we talked about this a few weeks ago. I think that's the big iffy thing. If pricing it's been rumored to be like 40 grand. If it's 40 grand, I don't think it's going to sell, even to the regular crowd that just wants a coupe. I mean, maybe your mom can afford a 40 grand car. That's great, but I think that's going to be the uphill battle. If it's Civic hybrid is what are they, 32, 33 maybe for a loaded one? Maybe they've gone to 34 since they like raising their prices every time they turn around. I don't know, but okay, even call it 35. Are people going to pay 5 grand more for a coupe that's less practical? I don't think so. Maybe a few people, but surely not in any reasonable volume. So I'd say you maybe put a grand or two premium on it over Civic, hybrid, and leave it at that. Any more than that, I think they're being greedy and trying to cash in on nostalgia, and I don't know if it's going to work beyond, again, the blank check. People are just excited about buying a new Prelude. Beyond those few people, I think it's going to be a slow seller. So it may end up being a Nissan Z situation, because that's another car where they screwed up pricing and they screwed up the packaging on the base one to make it so it wasn't appealing to enthusiasts without the LSD. And that I think really that, and combined with dumb dealers, which I think you're going to also have to compete with Prelude, because Honda dealers are some of the worst with markups. So I guarantee that's the storm I'm seeing. I'm hoping it turns out better than I'm anticipating, but I'm seeing they're going to try and go premium with the asking price, and then dealers are going to stick on their own 5 or 10 grand. And then you're going to be seeing all kinds of posts online about 50 grand Preludes at dealers, and why would anyone do this for 200 horsepower and blah blah blah, and completely kill the hype. And that's why Z is just now finally starting to get a little bit of traction after how many years on the market? 3 years now Z's been on the market. Now it's finally starting to move in reasonable numbers, partially because Supra's going away, I think, too. But it's that you can absolutely kill a good car by just screwing up the pricing, and also having dealers make that even worse on you. So we'll see, but I'm really hoping that those rumors are wrong, and Prelude's more like 35 instead of 40, but we'll see. And Vishal says, did you hear about Audi discontinuing the A7 and S7? RS7 will remain, and 2025 is the dying year of sedans, it seems. Yeah, seems to be the other way. I hadn't heard though about Audi with the A7. So I thought there was going to be a new generation of A7. Yeah, because I thought that's going to be, because if we're sticking to the same, I think Audi's still doing the thing where evens are electric and odds are gas, right? So that's why, we're going to have obviously A3 staying the way it is. We have A5 is all gas. I thought A7 was still going to be a thing, because I don't know how just because I've talked, I talked to the Audi executives about how they got through like RS6 Avant and stuff, and they said like RS6 Avant only came here because A6 All-Road was here and sold in justifiable numbers to keep it here. That's why they said, okay, well, we have the body in white that's crash tested. We can use that to kind of cut the costs on bringing in RS6 Avant, and that's the reason why we have RS6 Avant, is because of the All-Road, and that is entirely the only reason why. So with RS7, I'm worried if that is truly what they're doing with RS7, maybe now with the hot streak we see with the M5 Touring and stuff, maybe they'll find a way to bring it here on its own merits, but that makes it a whole lot more expensive to bring it to the States if you then have to crash test it. And I guess maybe you don't have to worry about emission testing anymore if, again, it's just free for all. But even just crash testing and certifying that stuff is expensive. So we'll see. But that's news to me. I'll have to check that out. That's unfortunate though, because the A7 and the S7 are both still really great. And I don't know why you would go to the extreme of only having RS7. That'd be like BMW doing only M5 touring and nothing else, no 5 Series. Like, that would just seems weird. I know they don't sell a ton of A7s and S7s, but that's interesting. I'll have to check that out. Thanks for the heads up, Fischel. And Ryan says one thing Dodge could do if they weren't so cheap is engineer a small displacement new V8. Yeah, with a hybrid. Those do way better on emissions and economy than the 5.7 liter 2-valve relic shoved back in. Yeah, and that's another thing. I think even like some Mopar fans were kind of hoping for that. Maybe we'll see that with Charger, but I certainly wouldn't hold your breath. I guess there's rumors that there was maybe a new V8, and I hope that that's the case, because if they can come out with a new V8, then I can get behind it. If it is actually, like trying to make an attempt at efficiency and trying to, not just, be blatantly gas guzzling, that would be nice to see. But so we'll see. Maybe Dodge will do it, and then maybe eventually that'll work its way into the Ram. That'd be kind of nice. But yeah, I think absolutely there's so many ways. I mean, we see some V8s that actually do get pretty good fuel economy. And it's just those Dodge ones are just not it. I mean, even the Bullet, I was getting 30 mpg on the highway in the Bullet, just, cruising in 6th gear. So, I mean, like, there's ways to do it. And again, have that fun without, a bunch of compromise, but just maybe a little bit of compromise. If people are willing to bend even a little bit, for the greater good here, maybe that could, help. I don't know. But yeah, we'll see what Dodge ends up doing. And let me see. I think Antonio says, what do you think of daily driving a Ford Focus RS? I've heard the suspension is hard. Is it that bad? I don't think so. I mean, I spent a week with an RS, but this was, again, probably 9 years ago or something, maybe 8. But, I think Focus RS is fine. I didn't recall it being rough, or, obviously test drive it on your own roads, see how it is, for around where you live. But if you need an all-wheel drive manual hot hatch, and you're having your eye on that versus the competitors, which, again, I won't go into, I think, because that's such a limited amount of options anyway, that if that's what you're after, it's not like you can get some super plush, comfy daily driver that has all that stuff, really. I guess you could argue you could go for like Golf R or something, but no, I think Focus RS should be mostly fine. I didn't have an issue with it. My only issue that I didn't like about Focus RS is the way my body type was. I just didn't fit well in the seat, and the seat bottom is really aggressively angled so that it's pointing upward. And so every time you put your, I'm trying to do my fingers here, every time you're pushing down on the clutch, it's putting pressure on the underside of your knee and your leg. I didn't love that. That maybe would be something that annoy me after a while. Try it out with your own, body type and see, if it works for you. I know that just comes down to how tall you are and stuff. But aside from that one complaint, I would have no issues dailying and Focus RS, at least from my memory. Maybe my, extra 10 years of age here would help me to feel differently about it at this point, but I had no issues. I love driving that thing for a week. It was great driving it every day. And Jordan says Dodge needs to stop playing around and bring back the Neon as a hybrid with slick tech. A new Neon would be fun. I'd love to see that. And just, any kind of compact sedan. It's still just so insane how Ford walked away from, sedans, how Dodge happily walked away from them. These were companies that sold them in large numbers in all their sedans, and they just decided to quit competing. It's a shame. Jiu-Jitsu says base WRX versus base GR Corolla. Seems prices are too close to each other now. Absolutely. No contest for me. I'd rather have a base GR Corolla every day of the week. Not even a consideration for base WRX. It's 39 grand for a base WRX. The whole appeal of that car goes out the window for me. The Subaru loyalists and diehards, it's great. Now, if you are into the modding scene, that's the only area where it really seems like, the WRX is the better way to go. It sounds like that does better with mods. It sounds like you get a lot more power out of those cars. The GR Corolla is fairly limited. And so if you were sticking with something from the factory, GR Corolla. If you're going mods, crazy, I would say go for the WRX. It seems to be tuners seem to love the new WRX. So I think that's kind of the distinction. But personally, I'm not into modding my cars really anymore. So for me, I'd be happy with the base GR Corolla. It's just good out of the box. It is the spiritual successor to the STI. It has the adjustable diff. It has the manual, and has that peaky nature to the turbo where you actually get a nice bit of boost in the upper RPMs versus even current WRX. It's so flat with the power. I mean, it's better objectively from a power delivery standpoint, but doesn't have the fun of the old WRXs where it was like you got nothing, and then there's the turbo at $4,000, and then you're zooming to the stars for 2,000 RPM, and then you got to go back and do it again for the next gear. So that's why, as an old Subaru WRX fan, GR Corolla absolutely would be the car I would drive right now if I needed 4 doors. And I had the money to afford a GR Corolla. Absolutely, that is still 100% the car I want more than anything else as far as relatively affordable stuff goes. And it also comes down to how much you care about luxuries. But I'd rather have the little 8-inch screen and a base GR Corolla that actually works well than it have physical knobs, by the way, for everything else, versus the WRX that makes you poke through the slow screen and everything else. So yeah, for me, base GR Corolla for sure. But again, your mileage will vary. Let me see other questions here. So Wheatman says, I've had both analog and digital drivers, gauge clusters, and I think I like the analog ones better. Once I set the digital cluster, I haven't changed it in years. And yeah, I agree. Even in the Bullet, the Bullet, I guess I was kind of a purist about, like, I didn't want to have any color that didn't fit with the green theme of the Bullet. But yeah, I set it and I never touched it. So I'm right there with you, Wheatman. Same deal. And I do appreciate analog, and that's actually one thing I kind of enjoyed about the Mazda 3 you'll see tomorrow is, it has the digital thing in the middle, but the tack and the fuel gauges are still analog in it. It actually, yeah, it's kind of got a classy vibe to it these days, and it doesn't bother me whatsoever. It's not something I complain about anymore when a car has an analog cluster, if it's well done at least, because it's, yeah, totally fine, and you don't have to have all the customization. It's nice to have, but not everyone needs that, Let me see. Lancelot says, I had a 93 Buick Regal with a digital cluster. That's fun. It was nice, except it wasn't shielded from the sun very well. And compared to what you can get today, it's very, very dated, obviously. Yeah. And yeah, I guess that was one of those early ones where they were trying to figure out, how do we do this and do it well. But that's cool you had one. That's fun. I always loved those early 90s Buicks and the 80s ones that had this CRT touchscreen and stuff. So many cool, fun futuristic things. It's so fun watching the old Motor Week videos where they cover those cars back in the day. That's cool you had one, though. That's fun. Let me see, where were we here? So Vishal says, one of my other neighbors got an EQB lease yesterday. Got to check it out and go for a ride in it. Pretty nice. They got it for $381 a month for 3 years and 12,000 miles. Nice. Yeah, that's not a bad deal. I know on Lease Hacker, some people were really getting cheap stuff. Like I saw some people, I think, were even under 300, but I don't think it was 12,000 miles. These are mostly 7,500 mile leases that I was seeing. So for 12,000 miles a year, that's actually, yeah, it's a really solid lease. That's awesome. And yeah, EQB, I wasn't a huge fan of the base one, but I haven't tried the all-wheel drive one to see if that's any better. But that was a consideration for Beth too, when we were looking at the Lyric, but it was still just a little too small. And she, again, just didn't love the way Mercedes does the powertrain calibration and all that. And I think it's just, the end of the day, it was just, cheaper interior. I mean, you sit in an EQB and then you sit in the Lyric. I mean, the Lyric, we're paying more than $381 a month for the Lyric, but like, it's just, it's no contest. The Lyric is so much nicer, so much more space and all that. But it's, Beth was hoping that EQB, would maybe be a more viable option because she loves that boxy shape and she loves Mercedes still, but just, wasn't able to get us, convinced that it's, it's worth the sacrifices that it would have entailed, the lesser range and all the other stuff. But yeah, it's cool that I mean, they got one of the last ones, 'cause it sounds like, Mercedes is completely pausing all EV production here for the States, 'cause, they were kind of tough sells for them anyway, and without the help of the tax credit, it's like game over for them for that stuff. In Europe, they'll still keep, doing well, 'cause, they're still actually EV sales are up really nicely this year, in Europe, but, not here. So they're gonna try and do this thing where they custom tailor their offerings for individual markets, but that only goes so far before it gets really expensive to make cars just for America. So we'll see what ends up happening with that. But see, Nick's not an EV fan. Fair enough. And let me see. YH says whoever came up with the Lexus name was a genius. Perfect name for a luxury brand. Hyundai doesn't have enough weight to make a luxury brand, even though I hear good things about the Genesis. Yeah, I mean, I guess it comes down to, where your perception of Hyundai and all that started. I see so much crap. So every time I do a Hyundai or Kia review, people still can't get over the image of the Hyundais and the Kias from the 80s and the 90s. And like, they can't, move past that for whatever reason. Typically, in my opinion, Hyundai and Kia do some of the best stuff in their segment most of the time. Best warranty still, and then with Genesis, you have all those same perks, best warranty in the segment. And I mean, like I said in the GV70 review this week, it's the nicest thing, in my opinion, I think, in the segment from an interior standpoint, and just in all the other ways. It's just so nice. And sorry, TFI, just seeing your member comment there just now. He says, if Dodge and Ram did a 2.0 supercharged Hemi V8 hybrid, that would be the smartest dumb idea ever. That would be really, that'd be really funny. I mean, like, look, guys, it's a V8, but it's this little leaf blower of an engine. That'd be funny. Oh man, yeah. I mean, there's ways to get creative. I mean, I was kind of hoping we'd see something like this from Ferrari too, with how they used to have these really small displacement V8s, really cool motors, back in like the 60s and stuff. And then now they've just grown so much, but it's like, you can still do a V12 and not have it be 6.5 liters, like you could still just have a lot of cylinders. And I mean, maybe there's smart engineering reasons why you can't just have a ton of cylinders that are small. But I think that's like a perfect workaround, potentially, obviously not going down to 2 liters, but if they did do something smaller, still gives you the sound, come up with the power to make sure it's got enough power for what everyone wants. Again, it's just a little bit of creativity is all it takes. And instead it's just, it's easy and cheap to do just the same old. And so that's what we're going to get for the next few years here. Let me see. So we are over time now. So I'm going to do the last few member questions here, and then we'll head out here for the night. But so let me see. I see Vishal says that his Alexa dealers remodeled a year ago, so it's probably nice and fancy. That's good. So they offer complimentary washes and interior cleanings, which I also got done. Definitely understand the high praise for their experience. Nice. Yeah, I'm glad they treated you well, and that's great, especially the interior cleaning. That is a little step above, because I think so. Whenever Beth had her Mercedes, they would always do a complimentary wash if we wanted it. But never did the interior, I don't think. So that's nice that Lexus does that. And Jordan says, I always see 2012 to 2019 Kias and Hyundai vehicles with blown taillights, oxidized headlights, peeling paint above the windshields. Same with the Nissan Altima that had the clear Euro taillights. Interesting. I guess maybe it's just a climate thing, because I don't ever see any of that stuff here in Pennsylvania. That's crazy, especially for like newer stuff like 2019s. That's wild that they would age that fast. And I see Vishal says white Hyundai and Kias in particular of that era have peeling paint. Lately, I haven't seen one with all the paint still intact. That's crazy. Yeah, I guess just paint is one thing we don't have very, because we have very little sun, relatively speaking, here. So I guess we don't see too much of that. But that's crazy. Yeah. And let me see. See, Ryan says that superchargers are the enemy of fuel efficiency. Yeah, the superchargers are definitely a drain, typically speaking, but they don't have to be. I mean, like, there was the turbocharged and supercharged Volvo motor, which was a reliability nightmare, it sounds like. But That I think got decent fuel economy, as long as you just, yeah, I don't know how they mitigated the losses of the supercharger, but they did do it. I think, the real solution for superchargers to minimize the, parasitic loss is just to do electric superchargers. And that's something we're seeing more and more of, it's just have that all be spun electrically. It's more efficient to do it that way, I guess, as well. And then you get, again, supercharger fun without draining the engine there. So it's interesting. Again, engineers are brilliant people. We can come up with solutions if people, want to put the money behind it and companies want to push for it. They can do it. That's the thing is, don't ever underestimate an engineer. They are intelligent, very brilliant people that can come up with all kinds of cool solutions. Look at how cars have progressed in the past 100 years. That's all mostly thanks to engineers and the innovations we have that we're not talking about. Wow, look at that awesome 300 horsepower V8 Mustang. That was what we were saying up until 2011. And then we had the 5.0 Coyote come out. Boom, 420 horsepower, super impressive, awesome. And that was just being smart with engineering, and it's just you can do awesome things just if you put the money and the talent behind it. Let me see. So Ryan says, on the screen front, we have a 2023 4Runner and Outback, both with full analog gauge clusters. Never had digital. That streak probably ends with the next car. Yeah, it'll be hard to avoid for sure. And I see YH is asking if the turbo or blower stops working, the whole engine stops working. I don't think so. Maybe someone else can chime in. I've never actually encountered with turbos. Yeah, that can be a showstopper for the engine sometimes, especially if the turbo disintegrates and then goes into the intake and all that. But typically it doesn't have to be that way. I don't think. I think it kind of is on as case basis. A per case basis. And Vishal says my new nickname should be GR Corolla fan. Absolutely. If I was doing a new channel that was fine with an appearance of bias, because that was the problem with Subaru X fan, was just car companies didn't want to work with me because I'd be biased towards Subaru by the name of being Subaru X fan. So that's the other problem. But if I ever did a fun channel name and I wanted to get away from the Matt Moran stuff for whatever reason, maybe GR Corolla fan would probably be the way I would go if I don't need to worry about appearing neutral. TFI says GRC mentioned, but I'm out of vodka. Apologies. Maya says this Family Guy said Kia. Too bad it's a Kia. Yeah, which again, those data perceptions. Hopefully, hopefully there's more people that give Kia a chance now than before. Vishal says he's not a hater of Hyundai and Kia. I think they're doing good stuff, just that the designs aren't for me personally. Too much going on. Yeah, and that's totally fair. He says I prefer more clean, understated design, which is why Volkswagen appeals to me. Yeah, and that's why it's something for everyone, and that's the beauty of the car world and why it's important to have options for people, And yeah, I mean, I think Hyundai, I gotta respect them, even if it's not always my cup of tea either. Like there's, some really real distinction in the lineup, I think, is what I love about the styling of them in particular. Is no one car is a size variation of the other one. It's not like Mercedes where we got small, medium, and large sedan, small, medium, large SUV. There's some real distinction there. Every single one is a polar opposite of the other. A Sonata looks nothing like a Santa Fe. Santa Fe looks nothing like Palisade. I think that's really commendable and just refreshing. I'm so tired of, this is our design language, which means we have to slap the same exact front end on everything. Even Cadillac's guilty of that. And it's like, how are you expecting people to be impressed by your Celestiq that's $350,000 if my Lyriq in the garage that's 64 grand has the same front end? I mean, there's changes and obviously it's a different size and there's some stuff, but I don't know if I was spending 350 grand on a Cadillac, if I would want to have, a lot of the same styling as your mainstream crossover, and I think that's kind of the beauty of Hyundai and Kia design, in my opinion, is there is, some real nice distinction there. And Ryan says, engineering wise, 500cc is the most efficient automotive cylinder volume, but that still leaves a 4-liter V8. Okay, yeah. So, yeah, I think a 4-liter would be great. And that's obviously, again, I think why all the Germans already arrived at that, a while back. And I mean, there's been 4-liter V8s, I believe, in America as well. I can't remember what I'm thinking of, but I feel like there was at least one. But, that's why everything in Europe that's V8, it's a 4-liter. 4-liter twin turbo, hot V. It's all again like what's the most efficient? That's the most efficient. That's the best for power and packaging and everything else. And so and I really thought we were going to see that. There was rumors that Mustang was going to go in that direction. I'm sure they're thankful now that they didn't. But there was this thing like, hey, this is the way all the Europeans are going. This is the best way to do this, the most efficient way, and that would be the way to go. But I guess not. We'll see if Americans ever do that. And Jay, thanks for stopping by here. He says, hey, Matt, great to see you again. Hopefully your family and you are doing all right. Sorry to log on so late, but bad news. The STIs in the body shop from some lady, hard break hitting me in morning traffic. Man, that sucks. I'm sorry to hear that. Hope you're doing okay, though. And at least hopefully you didn't get too banged up. But, man, hopefully at least they're fixing it, though. That's always good. And hopefully that's a car, plentiful parts. So hopefully you'll be back on the road soon. But sorry to hear that. And hope you have better luck here going forward and get back to enjoying that STI soon. Excuse me. Thanks for stopping by too, Jay. And let me see. So yeah, we are over time here. So let me see. I see Jay says, I'm okay physically, but not mentally, sadly. Hopefully I can provide feedback with it next week when I hopefully get it back. Body shop estimate is 8 days from last Thursday, I believe. I'm sorry to hear that not doing well mentally. I mean, car accidents definitely can shake people up. I know you've had a rough past couple of years here as well, Jay. So I'm sure that's the last thing you needed. But yeah, hope things can go well for you in the future. And yeah, that sucks. I mean, I know even, back whenever I had, the Mustang accidents, driving through those areas, especially the one with the falling tree, every time I drive through that part of, it's called North Park, where that tree fell on the roof of the Mustang, every time I walk through that, I tense up a little bit. And I'm like staring up at the trees, like, are any of these other trees just going to let loose on me today or what? Because we don't take care of trees around here in Pennsylvania. Like New Jersey, one of the good things they do is actually, trim the trees that are hanging over the road. PA, there's no such thing. We just have trees completely covering the road, and it looks like they're all, one good gust away from falling on everyone's cars. So it's one of those things that still is stuck with me, so I can totally understand some of that as well. But yeah, sorry to hear that it's rough for you there. And yeah, hope you at least have a fun rental like Wyatt is asking there. And yeah, so I see the last here from Isaac. He says, why do people hate on the wet timing belt of the tracks? I don't know. I didn't know it had that. I don't know anything about tracks reliability, unfortunately. The best way to go if you're looking for info on that kind of stuff is to go to like a subreddit, a Facebook group, or a forum for those vehicles and ask, why people are against that, if that's a common complaint, and see if people can give you some good reasons why. But yeah, I'm not sure about tracks as far as what the reliability looks like on those long term with that new, because it's kind of a newish motor with that, what is it, 1.2 liter turbo. Yeah, I think it's 1.2 turbo 3-cylinder right in the tracks. So I know, I sat through the presentation. They talked about how they did a bunch of improvements that, generation here for the tracks for that engine to make it more durable and all that. I don't know. I guess time will tell with the new tracks how well those last and how long they last. But I'm hoping that they, are better, because they're selling like 200,000 of them a year. They're just, because it's a brand new spacious car that's actually pretty nice and pretty high tech for, $25,000. It's exactly the car people need, for these times we're in. So, yeah, it's I hope Trax is reliable, because I think it really needs to be, so that Chevy again kind of builds some momentum with those cheaper cars, and doesn't burn people if if it has issues down the road. But Hyper Shadow, thanks so much for the super chat. He says good thoughts and happy vibes to us all tonight. Great, great sentiment. I totally agree. Hope everyone has a great week here. And yeah, thank you so much, Hyper Shadow, for the last super chat of the night. And Jordan says, thanks, Matt. Hopefully Chad can join in next week. He's working until 2 a.m. That's rough. Well, hopefully he can, and send him my best as well, Jordan. And CJ says, yeah, thanks, Matt. Have a good night. See you next week. Haven't been able to catch a break. I totally understand. Yeah, that's I feel for you, man. And yeah, if there's anything I can do here on the channel to perk you up, if there's any cars you'd like to see reviewed or anything, let me know. But yeah, I hope things get better for you here soon, Jay. And yeah, take care of yourself, and hope you all take care. Have a great week here, and I'll see you guys on the next one. And yeah, stay tuned for that Mazda 3 manual review here tomorrow morning or tomorrow afternoon. Anyway, take care. Have a good Labor Day, everyone.